my students. When I know better, I try to do better. This includes my LGBTQ students, my students of color, my low socioeconomic students, my students who have experienced trauma, and my students with disabilities. There is no discrimination when it comes to my heart. At the last school board meeting, it was stated that kindness and love are acts of grooming. My kindness and love for your child is not grooming. It is called being a good person that accepts them for who they are at that moment and beyond. My room is always and will always be a place of respect, kindness, and love. It doesn't matter who you are or who you love. You, my students, deserve to be respected and loved for exactly who you are. No matter what your personal thoughts and beliefs are, I will tell you this: I will love your babies as fiercely and as strong as I do my own, no matter what, because they deserve that. They are children, and children deserve love and kindness. To my students, please know that I am not the only one who feels this way. There are many of us who love you just as you are. Love, Mrs. McKnight.
Our next speaker is Martin Byrne.
Thank you. As most of you know, I am a former BPS student. I graduated this spring, and I'm now attending college in another state. As I recently had the unfortunate reflection that my time in Batavia Public Schools was worse than I had realized. A fish doesn't know it is in a fishbowl, and it took me being in a different educational environment for me to realize how widespread some of our district safety problems are. And I'm here tonight on my winter break because I care deeply about this district and everyone in it. And as long as I am able to, I will continue to fight for a district that is a safe and equitable district and school environment for all of us. And I know that I'm not alone in that regard. I'm here to remind you that you have much work to do to meet your goals of a safe school environment for all students. And what a reminder we got of that at last month's meeting. I know, and I'm struggling to find a word to describe it, but I know that some of the views that were expressed at last month's meeting do not represent our community. But when this is spoken, we need to take it seriously. It should not be met with gratitude from board members, even casually. And lastly say, I won't be very long tonight. As for the story time that we had, and it's always nice to have story time at a public meeting, I think it would be a real shame to allow people are allowed to have the views and the values that they hold, but for us to accept those values for everyone who doesn't hold them, to neglect that diversity, whether it be intellectual diversity, whether it be diversity in terms of gender or sexuality or experiences, would be a great shame. Because again, we are a better district than that. I know that we are. And I know that I trust our teachers to make the right decisions for their students, for the classes that they teach. And by the way, in my last year in high school, I took that class, AP Lit. Sorry, I should say I started that class. I didn't finish it because it's an extremely, extremely difficult class. It's one of the hardest classes that you can take in high school. And I know that the students in that class are there to be challenged and have the right to see themselves in curriculum, for their experiences to be seen in the books that they read and the classes that they have. Thank you.
And our final speaker is Kim Howland.
Good evening. My name is Kim Howland, as she said, and I am a wife and mother of 4 children, one of whom is currently a sophomore at Batavia High School. I am also an educator with a BS in Education from Miami University and a master's degree in Communicative Sciences and Disorders from Northwestern University in Evanston. I've worked extensively in public schools throughout my 25-plus year-long career with tenure in 2 community consolidated school districts in Illinois, and have a track record of excellence as evaluated by my administrators and direct supervisors. I say this because I think it's very pertinent to what I am about to discuss. I am also, and most importantly, a faithful Catholic who, with God's grace, desires to get my husband, children, and other family members, and myself, through the pearly gates of heaven, which is ultimately why I'm here. I recently became aware that junior level students have been required to read these very 2 disturbing books that have been discussed this evening, The School of Good Mothers by Jasmine Chan and The Awakening by Kate Chopin. Both of these books contain very adult, dark, dystopian themes focused on sexual immorality, including adultery, reference to teenage sex, sexual deviance, including references to pedophilia, child abuse, physical abuse, racism, abandonment, and suicide. In both books, in fact, a main character takes their own life. These books are by definition pornographic. Pornographic, as you may know, is a compound word. Porna, the first part, stemming from the Greek word porneia, meaning sexual immorality, and graphic, stemming from the Greek word graph, means writings. So pornographic literally means writings of sexual immorality, which most definitely, unequivocally classifies these books. In addition to being labeled as pornographic, I would add they are obscene, since, by definition, obscene is to violate common decency, especially that of the folks in this community, which is highly and predominantly Christian. And in speaking of Christianity, let's be clear, the Bible condemns lust in no matter the content it is consumed, which is the predominant theme of both these books. With that information said, I want to examine the negative effects the aforementioned books potentially have on our children. First, let's look at the list of significant negative impacts pornographic material has on teenagers. Number 1, it potentially leads to distorted perceptions of sex and relationships. Second, it can increase sexual preoccupation. Third, it leads to not only objectification of women, but harmful attitudes towards women. And fourth and foremost, it can lead to behaviors like sexual aggression.
Thank you, Kim. That concludes our public comment.
Thank you very much. Next is our BPS partners, Drew Ray. You hiding back there somewhere, Drew? Thank you.
I just want to say best part of winter break is when your students come back from college and say hi. That's always fantastic. Last week, for a variety of reasons, I was fortunate enough to be able to spend some time in every school building throughout the district. The more time I'm able to spend in our schools, the more I'm able to witness firsthand all of the great things that are happening. Last week, I got to see Mrs. Barrett, Mrs. Gallardini, Mrs. McAlpin, and Mrs. Rodriguez all in action. I was able to say hi to Mr. Baum and Mrs. Burns from the ILP program at Grace McWayne. I even got to pop into Mrs. Bird's class and had my son and his classmates explain their learning to me. Kindergartners were explaining their learning to me. Blew my mind. I could go on, it was amazing. Having that opportunity reminds me of what a great district we are in. So, in response to several recent board meeting comments that were directed towards our educators and students, I have 2 things to say. First, I moved my family here because of the teachers. And I'm damn proud to teach alongside the educators of Batavia Public School District, and I take comfort in knowing that they have always and will always have the best interests of my children, of our students, in their hearts and minds. And I take it personally when anyone suggests otherwise. Second, we can discuss curriculum, procedure, policy, heck, even politics, clearly at these meetings. But hurtful and harmful comments directed towards our students, children, as I've said before, these meetings are democracy in action, and democracy gets messy, but let none of us forget that humanity matters, that kindness matters, and that our children are watching. That's all I've got for you. Happy holidays. Go Bulldogs. Solidarity with BESPA. Thank you. Good night. Good luck.
Thank you, Drew. My understanding Kevin is not feeling well, so he's not here today. Holly, did you have a component to read, or?
I
did miss
do.
it? Okay, thank you. You just have to do your best Kevin impression, if that's okay.
Well, try to grow my beard in more.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go up to the podium and
No,
She's like, I'm
right
not
here. That wasn't part of the negotiation. He is very sorry for the late notice and unable to attend the meeting tonight. He and his wife Lori have been blessed to play Santa and Mrs. Claus for many local schools, families, businesses, organizations, and the Batavia's Boardwalk shops for the past several years. We visit with more than 1,000 children during the season and a number of cats and dogs. Our visits this year included the Rotolo Middle School holiday party, and I'm gonna try to pull these pictures up for you. So, I mean, the likeness is obvious. I'll try to speak in a better Santa voice, but more than 40 area businesses and organizations, our visits this year included the Rotolo Middle School holiday party, which was organized and hosted by Administrative Secretaries Heather Mendel and Jillian Thrud. More than 40 area businesses and organizations provided items for the party's raffle, which raised more than $1,100 for Batavia United Way, which financially supports local health service providers, including 24-hour crisis care providers and care for local seniors. It was a night of fun and holiday spirit for many members of the BEA and BESPA at the middle school. Thank you, and a happy holiday season to all. And there you go. And
Thank you.
that's their report.
Great message, terrible impression.
Next month.
All right, and our ambassadors are off busy furthering their educational goals in life, so we will wish them well on their finals and have a enjoyable week and fun winter break. Board Liaison Committee, anything to share this week?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm on the policy committee, and we met here on December 9th, and we discussed policy 8.025, distribution of community interest messages. If you just Google that policy, the community can look it up and read it. I'll just give a brief summary of what it is. Batavia Public Schools serves as a vehicle for distribution of materials for community-based and governmental organizations providing programs and services for children. The distribution method, commonly known as backpack mail, has been a valuable tool for school and outside groups. Backpack mail will be electronic communication only, so this is an email that goes out communicating to the community. Information distributed by Batavia Public School must be directly related to a program or service for children. Examples of outside agency would be the public library, police and fire departments, and scouting. Examples of school-based organizations would be PTO. That's just some excerpts from the policy, but sort of the genesis of this was this policy has been in place for a long time. It was adopted in August of 2010. And at the last BIC meeting, which the BIC meeting is something that happens quarterly, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, it's a lot of our organizations, the PTOs, boosters, stage, they get together and they talk about issues that they're addressing. And something that came up was, I think mostly from the PTOs, a desire to, at least on a limited basis, send paper home with their kids to communicate information. And so that's what we discussed, the policy as whole, and then in relation to that matter. And the policy committee reviewed the policy. In our opinion, the policy is good, but there could be room to allow for handouts on a limited basis if maybe procedures at a building level were modified. So Mr. Kim and Holly are going to consult with the administration and discuss possible procedural changes at the building level, and then hopefully report back to the policy committee before we meet again, with the idea that maybe there might be a change where, like for example, maybe once a semester the PTO could send a piece of paper home with their child that lists all the activities that might be coming. I know I'm old with gray hair. I like to put it on the fridge and see it. So that's something we're going to talk about. So I would like to let the people that were at that last BIC meeting to know that we are looking at it. And I'm also a member of the Hall of Honor. Privileged to be on that committee. And the subcommittee met also on December 9th. That was a busy day for me. And what we did is discuss new submissions And we currently have a lot of good candidates, but we're always looking for more. And so we're looking for is graduates of Batavia High School, teachers that have, I believe, 15 years of at least tenure with the district, and then friends of the district. So that could be someone that wasn't a graduate or a teacher but made significant contributions to BPS 101. So if you know someone that fits that criteria, we would encourage you to make your submission to hallofhonor@bataviafoundation.org, or if you want to write it out, you could drop it here off at the Rosalie Jones Center. We're still accepting submissions until January 15th. And so I would just encourage, if you know someone that you think should be honored, we had a great class last year that we honored homecoming week. I would encourage you to go ahead and submit them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any others? Nope.
We didn't,
No meeting.
Fifi didn't meet.
Okay. All right, consent agenda. According to our board policy, we designate a portion of the agenda as consent agenda for those items that do not usually require extensive discussion before board action. These items generally are routine, recurring, and can be grouped together for efficiency. Please, would you please take us through the roll?
Absolutely. 5.1 and 5.2 is the approval of the November 19th, 2024 meeting minutes and closed session meeting minutes. 5.3 is our monthly personnel report. 5.4 is our monthly approval of payroll and bills. 5.5 is the destruction of closed session recordings from March 23rd, 2023. 5.6 is accepting donations from BYA and the New York Life Foundation. We appreciate what they've done. 5.7 is the authorization of renewal of patch and system management software. 5.8, authorized renewal of cybersecurity platform. And 5.9 is the approval of our consent agenda.
Anyone have any questions?
I actually had a question if Mr. Thurlby could give some clarifications on items 5.7 and 5.8 as far as what those items are for and how they impact students in the district.
Sure. So I gotta get my number right. 5.7 is automated patch management, so we can manage stuff from this building. It lets us keep up to date automatically, so instead of missing a patch the same day that it's dropped, it's installed on all the machines, so it protects us from hopefully anything trying to get in with an exploit or something like that. 5.8 watches for those said exploits and starts to block them in advance as well if it detects anything like that, and there's actually eyes on those alerts as well through that platform. So it's kind of a whole suite of things kind of melded together to protect not only our kids but staff and all of the people in this building as well.
And then a question I think you probably almost anticipate, but for these expenses, were they anticipated and they were budgeted for?
Yep, I actually, if you noticed, I started doing multi-year with one of these. The 5-year lock-in actually helped us save money that way. I haven't done it with the 5.8 yet because there's still some talk from the state to start funding some of that, but it hasn't been official yet. So I'm still going yearly until they actually make that happen. So hopefully soon.
Yeah, thank you for those explanations.
Sure.
Hey Dave, real quick, so, and maybe Tony has explained this to me before, but do these get bid out?
They do not. This is, being technology, I don't do that. That's not part of that process. This is more of us shopping around to find the best solution for the best system that we have here. These are very unique. The 5.8 is more of a, I'll call it an industry standard type thing. There are competitive things there, so we did actually evaluate 3 different systems for that aspect of it. They're the ones that won that whole process, partly because of what they offer and the cost overall as well was worth it. So,
To answer your question more directly, I would say that technology is exempt from the bidding requirements, so we don't have to bid out technology. That's not to say that we don't do that on occasion, but if we're not bidding it, we either issue RFPs or we seek multiple quotes that we can get the best price possible.
I always try to get 3 if I can, if it's a platform that is able to compete, you know. 5.7 really isn't, it's a very unique thing, but. Anything else?
All right, I will entertain a motion to approve all items in the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Aaron, second by
B.
RJ. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Gonzalez, oh, sorry. Meadows,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Kilburg,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Arulagou,
Yes.
All right, next is reports. FOIA. Tom, would you like to lead us through the FOIA report?
Yes, all of the FOIA reports have been presented to the board. All requests were granted.
Thank you. Tony, treasurer's reports.
Nothing out of the ordinary to report there.
Okay. And then next is the overview of BPS 101 alignment with the board district with the strategic plan. So Tom, this is effectively the board level of the kind of principal presentations that were done last week, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Take it away.
All right. As just noted, last month, our principals and their school leadership team leaders presented to the Board of Education. This presentation is going to address the district's strengths, opportunities for improvement, and steps we're taking to meet those goals. So it'll be very similar to what you saw. We're trying to also mirror the structure our buildings used so that it's consistent in presentation to the board, so you have an ability to connect the 2 months of presentations you've had. Before we begin, I do want to say, I want to thank all of our staff, all of our employees, and all of our leadership personnel that have helped kind of bring us to this point that we're presenting tonight. I think we're going to be walking through a lot of strengths, but we also have all these people to thank because we're also going to talk about opportunities for us to move forward in how we're going to grow this district and continue to be a district that looks at things that have to improve. We'll talk about some of the steps and strategies that we're taking. And for anyone who is looking at our board book highlights more specific details, certain points of data that we illustrated for the public and for the board. The presentation tonight may not go all the way into some of those same data sets, but we provided those for you. We've also shared links that take anyone who wants to take a look on a deeper dive on their own to various websites that will help them look at data or understand data that we use in our school district, all right? And so at this time, if I could please, I would like to have several people in our audience introduce themselves, be recognized. They're leaders that help us make a lot of the work happen in this district. They're the leadership that also collaborates with our BEA and BESPA colleagues. They're the ones that are behind the scenes in helping us prepare the work that we present to you on a regular basis. So, team, if you don't mind, could you, you have to go to the mic, but sorry. If you don't mind just introducing yourself and your role.
All right.
Pretty please. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, Josh, Mark, you guys go too. Yeah, you guys go. Sorry, Mark. You're
Mark.
I think I got daggers.
I think you did. It's not like Mark's not up there enough.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Carrie Rue, and I'm the Director of Special Education.
My name is Natalie Assel. I'm the Director of Student Services.
My name is Ming Shelby, Director of Professional Learning.
John Hicks, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Josh Bulak, Director of Finance.
Dave Thurlby, Director of Information Services.
And Mark Anderson, Director of Operations.
Awesome, thank you. And as one of our students alluded to tonight, or stated earlier this night, it's a team, right? And we're working on making sure this entire district moves forward as a team in everything we do. So I want to just make sure that they're recognized for the work that went into everything we're going to talk about tonight. All right. Okay, so moving on to our next slide. Thank you, everyone.
They can be seated.
This should look very familiar for people. This is the three strategic priorities that were approved at our June board meeting. And this has been the framework for all the work we've been continually moving forward and everything that we're planning for in the district. One of the things I wanted to highlight for you as a board, and for anyone listening, is that the work that we will be doing with District Management Group is going to give us the framework here at this table and how we continue to move forward the governance of our district and the policy development or shaping and other aspects of leadership that happens at this table to ensure that the work in our strategic plan gets carried out. So while there are times that you're going to see tonight, some of our priorities that may feel and see very clearly which department might be responsible for some of the work that's occurring. Please keep in mind, there's often a lot of times these are not silos, but when one is doing something, that impacts what other teams and departments need to do to support the work. And I'll give you the prime example with our esports club tonight. You know, you heard them recognize our technology department, and I'm very grateful that they were able to do that because our technology department had to get in on the ground and figure out how to set up all the equipment, the technology aspects, get them connected to the resources that they needed so those kids can participate in this activity. And now, why is that important? Because addressing strategic priority 2, if you, you know, figure out the more clubs we add that are giving students with different passions an opportunity to participate and engage in school, increases our ability to make kids feel like they have a place to go to, a desire to come to school when they may not have prior to that, right? So I think that's a great example of how we have various departments working together as a team to make some stuff happen for our kids. All right, so on the next slide, this is the structure. These are some of the high altitude talking points we'll have tonight in our presentation. And we'll go ahead and begin. So under Strength 1, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Newkirk, and he's going to talk about the growth trends as one of our strengths that we've identified with the data.
Yep, just before we get into this, please know that you can ask questions at any time. We'll kind of go through just some high-level strategic data. And when you look at that type of data, you might look at it and see a lot of strengths and some opportunities to celebrate, but you also might see something that falls into the opportunity. So it's really hard in looking at big data to like put it in one category of strength or opportunity. It really just tells a story of typically both, right? And we're a district that's committed to continuous improvement. So we're always looking for like, what are we really doing well? We can capitalize on that, and where can we make significant changes to help better impact the outcomes of our students. So we'll start with growth trends. Our growth trends are heading in the right direction. You have this in front of you as board members. My vision is pretty terrible, so you might see me, the glasses go on and off about 25 times tonight, but we'll take a look at some growth trends. We're gonna show you just as an example of some of these trends, the MAP results. MAP is by NWEA. This is an assessment we give students kindergarten through 8th grade. We give it 3 times a year. About 8 million students do the same thing across the country, so there's a wide data pool for us to have normalized data. MAP is something we've used in the district for probably almost 20 years. So a lot of students who are graduating, I can look and see over 12 years worth of data that they have and look at those data trends over time. So it's a pretty consistent measure that we have within the district. At the state level and some of the other assessments I'm going to talk about tonight, we don't have that kind of consistency because the tests have changed, the windows have changed, all sorts of things have changed, so it's harder to look longitudinally at our students' progress over time. On the left-hand side, you can see proficiency. So proficiency is like that 50% mark where MAP believes that students should be at in terms of being proficient at their grade level standards. You can see that over time, since 2022 to 2024, we've seen a slight upswing. We had a really banner crop of math students in 2024 in that spring, which is the end. And then there is a little bit of summer regression as you get to this fall. So the fall of 24. But we can see that those proficiency numbers are headed in the right direction. Probably more importantly, our growth trends, right? Every kid's going to start at a different spot. We want to see that growth headed in the right direction. So you can see we try and keep the scales on these somewhat the same, so we're not misleading you with some manipulated scales of the line graphs here, but you can see over time we've seen quite significant upticks in the right direction of growth trends over the past several years. So part of that's probably recovery from COVID. There's been some test changes to this as well, which probably accounts for 1 or 2 points. And then we've really seen our teachers and our staff, I credit them with really digging in the classroom, their pedagogical strategies. They are really the drivers of growth for our kids. So you can see that is headed in the right direction. So there's a lot to be proud of. Another thing to kind of show as a strength are some student pathways. One of the metrics that the state of Illinois on the Illinois report card, which I encourage all of our board members and community members to go on. If you want comparisons with other schools, you can do it with the click of a button. It's a really nice tool that they've developed over time. Freshman on track means students are on track to graduate. So freshman year, when you look at the data, is actually really important. When students fall off track at that time, their likelihood of not graduating goes up significantly. So we want to make sure that our freshmen are on track, that their high school experience that leads to those post-secondary experiences is one that is very solid, and they're not in a mode of deficit of credit recovery for our students. You can see, again, we didn't adjust the scale on this one. You can see our kids are on track as freshmen. So if you look at this is a relative strength. When I look at other districts, they're asking, what are we doing? This is a really nice number over time. We do see some gaps with some of our other groups. So you can see the yellow line is LII, so it's for everyone. That's a low income indicator. It doesn't mean the student is low income. It means that their family is. So we try and use student first language here. EL students, or English learner students, is the blue line. And then students with a identified disability, or IEP students, that's the red line there. So you can see there are some gaps, but those gaps are closing. So most of our freshmen at BHS are on track, which is a really great statistic for us because they have that much higher likelihood of graduating high school. Post-secondary experiences, again, this is something that I think we should be really proud of. And this is a lot of the work of the high school, but it's without our elementary staff, without our middle school staff, we wouldn't have kids that are ready for these types of experiences. So this really is a system functioning as it should to give kids pathways to post-secondary. When I was Jenna's English teacher,
Wow.
oh, that was funny. I would say 90% of our effort was on four-year college admittance, right? So we were really, and we were good at it. We pumped a lot of kids into four-year universities, and that was really our singular focus. And what we came to realize is that's not for every kid. There's lots of different pathways, and our community told us this through various strategic planning things, and when we talked to them about what they want for their children, it varied, right? Some students are going directly into the workforce, some into the military. Amazing number of kids are doing amazing things in gap years and really experiencing life. Some are going to community college. We still send about 25% of our graduating class to our community college, our partner Wabansi. And then we do send a good chunk of our kids on to four-year schools. So with the wide variety of things that students want to do post-secondary, we have to give them the skills and the options to do that. We have to give them those experiences. And I think some of this data really shows that our district does a really good job of giving kids those post-secondary experiences. And that can be an AP class, which is based on college curriculum. It can be a dual credit class, which we do through our partnership at Wabansi. But this can be in the trades too. So kids that are earning advanced certificates or moving along in their career path, these are those post-secondary experiences that we want to give our students. There's a big emphasis on work-based learning that we'll talk to the board about more in the coming years, because it's great that we're giving kids those opportunities, but it's much better for their parents, our community, and them if they know what they want to do when they do graduate high school. So giving them those work-based experiences is really something that's important to us and is important to our kids and our community. So you're going to hear us really ramp up talking about those work-based experiences, because kids need to know what work looks like. Most students, if you ask them to name careers, could name maybe their parents' career, and then maybe about 8 others, including teacher, police officer, professional baseball player, some of those things. So we want them to know like what work really looks like. Some of you have interesting jobs, and there's lots of great things out there in our community that they can connect to and experience, but if they don't experience it, it's not a possibility for them. So our post-secondary experiences is something that we're really hitting out of the park. Tom?
And there are two things I'd like to draw your attention to on this particular strength that Brad has just spoken to. It is covered in the board packet, but I think it deserves a little recognition here. One is that the dual credit opportunities and advanced placement opportunities and success rate we have in enrolling students at our high school here in our district is tops in our region. That is a data-based statement that I just made. In 2023, 45% of our high school students at Batavia High School were enrolled in a dual credit or AP class. And if you think about that, the number I just shared with you is about half of our kids were doing that. And we had numerous kids taking multiple kinds of classes that fall under that category. So these are single head count students taking at the minimum one class. The second piece of data I want to talk about is our post secondary.
For 1 second, could you, Tom, could you define what dual credit is?
So dual credit is a course that's taught at our high school where a student receives graduation credit for the district to graduate, but will also receive credit from a higher educational institution. So it's recognized being 2 credits, dual credit. So in a sense, like if you take enough classes at your time at Batavia High School, you could essentially qualify to start your college experience as a sophomore bypassing a year of tuition. Brad, did I do a good job of covering that?
Great job.
I was gonna say, both my boys, but particularly my youngest one, went into Colorado State with 19 credit hours. Yeah. He reminds me that he's not graduating early, but, you know, there's that opportunity to do that.
Never works out.
Right, it never quite works out.
Never works out that way,
You
but
know,
it
he
could.
is, like, he's ending his sophomore, he's halfway through his sophomore year right now, and he's technically a junior.
And then the second piece of data, I'm sorry, did that answer
your
everything you
question, I
wanted?
just want people
Okay.
to know, because it's,
Okay.
It's
I'm
impressive.
guessing the cost of tuition at Batavia was a lot less than where he's.
Significantly,
Yeah.
yes. Well, the other thing that I was gonna say, that what's nice is sometimes you'll hear people talk about, like, oh, we're now focusing on this, so like, okay, we're not focusing on 4-year degrees, right? And we're focusing on these other things, but what really happened is, that doesn't mean the focus was less on the 4-year, there's still better avenues and things that were explored to reinforce that process, not at the risk of anything else or vice versa, you know? And that's kind of important to know, because there's kind of a mythos of, well, we can't do all of it, so, well, these kids are achieving well enough, they're going to 4-year college, let's focus on these now. And this, I don't get the sense that's the case. Thanks.
And then the second point of data I wanted to share and draw attention to is the community college remediation rate. What that means, so we're at 9%. The next closest district to us is at 14%. And what that means is when our students enroll at, let's use Waubonsie Community College as our example, when they go in, if they are deemed to not have enough proficiency in English or math, they would be required to take a course, enroll in a class that gives them 0 credit to develop their foundational skills. Then they would be able to take another class the following semester that would start to earn them credit. At 9%, we are one of the lowest in our region in terms of that remediation rate for our students. So again, huge kudos to all the teachers and the curricular alignment and work that's been going on for years in this district. And it's just, again, one of those examples, love to see that number hit 0, right? So we're trying to work towards growth and gains in all the areas we're presenting, but this was another area that I just wanted to make sure we drew attention to. So sorry, Brad, I cut in on your dance.
It's all good.
Apologies, I'm gonna step back off.
And the nice thing about that low remediation rate is that oftentimes loans and grants do not cover below 100 level classes. So a student may be paying full price for those classes just to remediate into a credit-bearing class, which is a kind of a double whammy against students who are struggling. And we want them to make sure that they're launching that college career successfully and not having to take below 100 level courses.
Brad, can you explain that? Right
The
hand?
CTE concentrator, yeah. So CTE is career and technical education, so the graph on the right shows that placement rate. So a concentrator is when you go beyond dabbling in one of these career and technical education areas. So this is a student who's taken multiple classes, say in graphics or in industrial arts or in business. They've taken multiple classes. So it looks at those students who they call concentrators are concentrated in the area of focus. So at the middle school, our focus is actually the opposite. We want kids to experience a lot of different things, right? So we won't, you know, there's so many options at our middle school. The board has really made sure that we provide a number of options at our middle school because we want kids to try things out. But as kids progress and their career and future plans become more solidified, if that happens, they might concentrate in one of those areas. And this is saying that these students find placement. And that placement could be any of those options that we talked about before, including the Peace Corps, which is noted up there. So these are students who find a place in college, in a career, in the military, in the workforce, that percent. So you can see, what is it, 79.1. Thank you. 79.1% of our students who are a concentrator are finding that placement 2 years outside.
Is this somewhat
But does that
tangentially
include
related?
college?
It could include college.
It could include
Yes.
college, okay.
Is this somewhat tangentially related to kind of like your workplace kind of process? Like if they're concentrating on that, it's giving them a better indication of what they want to do later.
Right, so if we can get kids to take the courses, they have that basic fundamental understanding, but we also need to give them those experiences to know that they really like that. So I
Okay.
think that's kind of one of the missing pieces that we have right now is we want to make sure kids are sure about their decisions or where they're concentrating their time. Good question. Another relative strength is our students and staff perception of safety. This comes from the 5 essentials. I might have Tony jump in here to correct anything because he wrote part of his dissertation on the 5 essential survey, so he has a much deeper breadth of information. But this is a required survey through the state of Illinois that was developed by the University of Chicago. And it's really, its main focus is to let us know if we are set up for school improvement and success. It's not a culture rating. It really is about our schools set up in a couple of different dimensions to improve ourselves. And the short answer is we are. But one of the things that they ask about is safety, because that's such a key part of students really accessing their learning. So the survey asks questions at different developmental levels for the student that's answering it. And it also asks them slightly differently for parents. So this goes out every spring, so you'll see this about February, March. Sometimes we push it a little bit later because we get better response rates when we get out of winter. You can see it has a number of different areas, the hallways, bathrooms, classrooms, and this is the percent of students who answered that they mostly or to a great extent believe that they are safe in that area. So you can see, for example, hallway safety, 88% of our students, for that graph, answered they feel mostly or to a great extent safe in their hallways. And it goes through bathrooms, all sorts of different things. So our students are generally telling us that they feel safe there. Their perception is it. Parents, again, there's not as many parents who answer these surveys, but it's really helpful to us if they do that. So that the school addresses bullying, 70% of parents believe that we mostly or to a great extent address those bullying issues. And bullying won't be the last time I talk about this. It'll be under one of our opportunities as well. So we'll come back to that one.
Excuse me. How are these areas chosen? Are these the standard
Yeah,
ones?
this is baked into that survey that every Illinois school gives. Well, I won't say every, but most.
So you can compare them to the other schools?
Yeah.
Is there opportunity to add questions?
No.
Okay.
It's a standardized metric.
Okay.
So that's one piece of data on that. We're going to talk about some opportunities, both academically, in our area of belonging, which is a big part of our strategic plan, and then in areas of access. You'll notice more slides because we love to focus on things that are broken, because I think we're problem solvers and we want the best for our kids. So, you know, I tried to give you some high-level data of our strengths, but I'm going to show you more slides, whether you like that or not, on things that we're going to improve. The next is IAR data. So this is a state-required test for students in grades 3 through 8. It's undergone a number of different changes over the years. It's been fairly stable recently, but we're expecting some more changes in the future, which doesn't make comparing things over the long term very easy, but it's been pretty stable for 3 years, so that's what we're showing you data. You can see, again, our groups, taking a look at those groups in both reading and math, that there are gaps between some of our groups, which is one of the things that we are really focused on as a team. We talk about this pretty much constantly, is addressing what are those achievement gaps that we're seeing between some of our groups of students. So you can see there's a fairly significant gap in reading between our EL students and then our all category, and then the other subgroups as well in reading. A little bit less so in math, but those achievement gaps are something that we're laser-like focused on in our work.
Clarification question.
Yep.
The all is literally everyone, so.
All the kids,
Those
yeah,
that are
so-
in the other 3 categories are lumped into all.
Yep. So it's all, so that would be, right now, the end number for that is 2,147 students. So that's what we got in grades 3 through 8.
So there's even a larger
That's-
disparity gap than
That's what I
what's
was getting
reflected.
to. If you pull those people out, those kids out, that remaining will jump up more. Okay.
A little bit less so in math, but still some of those gaps. Looking at another required metric, this is the SAT. This will be the last year that you hear me talk about this, since the state has switched over to the ACT. But you can see that kind of the same type of pattern happening here, where when you look at all of our students who take that particular test, and this is juniors only, there are those achievement gaps in both reading and in math. So really looking at that proficiency, and then those achievement gaps is something that we're focused on. This is map data going back to map data, and we celebrated this as a strength, but it's also something that we're focused on in terms of an opportunity for growth. Again, this is an internal metric, but you see those same types of patterns where we're not seeing the same performance, either growth or proficiency, out of some of those groups. So again, that's an area of concern for us. We want to make sure that all students are being successful. Whatever your label is, whatever you are experiencing, wherever you're starting out, we want to make sure that you're growing and that you're proficient at those skills, because they are key to your future. Similar things. Turning our work to belonging, again, I'm going to show you quite a few slides related to both social and emotional learning, and that's a skill set that actually accelerates academics. And then we'll talk about the general reports of belonging, and then show you some activity information as well. So this year, the the board authorized us to use a new survey system, Panorama, which looks at the ability of our students to report themselves, and then we also get teacher perceptions in there as well of our students. And you can see in this graph, it's around emotional regulation, hugely important, grit, that determination, self-management in a public school environment, that's pretty key, and then social awareness. So you can see that our students perform fairly well, but we're also looking at some of those gaps for those same types of groups in those SEL skills. So a lot of the conversation that we have around this data is, one, how do we boost this? We boost this through our systems, through Tier 1 instruction, that core instruction that we give all kids, and that is focused on building some of those skills through partnerships with our parents, because they play a huge role in their child's life in developing some of these skills. So making sure parents have some tools and strategies for doing this, and then also looking at how do we provide experiences that can help boost some of these areas as well. There's tools and strategies that we can teach students in order to develop some of these skills like emotional regulation.
So this was the new survey we did.
This is the new survey.
It was self-reported by
So
the
that
student
slide,
and
yep.
self-observed by the teacher.
So this is teacher perceptions on the
So the
previous slide.
teacher, like, reported on each student?
And then here's what the students are saying about themselves. So you can see there's less variance in the student report than there is in the teacher report on these same skills. So students are reporting probably at a higher rate that they have some of these skills than we're witnessing from the teachers. So I think it's important to look at both of these aspects, right? So what are teachers observing in a classroom? That's very valuable data for us, but also let's listen to the students and see what they're saying. We don't ask the really young primary students, but students in grades 3 through 5, this is what they're reporting to us around some of these skills. So we're seeing less variance when the students are reporting. Turning to the secondary, here again, students, there's no teacher ratings at these levels. But you can see that the students, again, less variance than we saw with the teacher perception for elementary. But again, our students are reporting at pretty high rates that they have these skills.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing, because if you look at the academic work that we're asking of our kids on a day-to-day basis, these skills are hugely valuable for that, right? So if you're asking a kid to learn at 12 years old algebra, which is a pretty abstract concept, some of us weren't great math students, you need grit to do that. So really, these types of skills that we try and foster in our students are hugely important to their academic development as well, right? We're a school, a learning organization. That's our ultimate goal, is to get kids to learn. But we know what's best for them is to have some of these skills so that they can access their education the best, right?
And some of these are almost literally on what's on the portrait of a graduate as well.
Yeah.
So it's providing a good feedback loop to that as well.
Is there data to compare to other schools or states?
The buildings last month showed you some of those national percentiles. There is that data, we have not, because we're just starting to look at that.
Right.
On the next slide, you'll have a little bit of it, but it's, I don't like to talk about it because I still don't know enough about it to really speak intelligently about it and kind of be confident in that, but that's just me.
My question is just because the adjective you used was that these were good numbers, and when I see growth mindset, I don't know if those numbers are good. If I hear every other student that doesn't have growth mindset, I don't know if that should be celebrated or not.
Natalie, do you want to come up and talk a little bit more about that?
I can talk a little bit about it. So like Brad shared, this is a new tool for us, and there are national norms for each of these band areas that our students' self-ratings are compared against, as well as our teacher ratings are compared against. So something to note is if a student is demonstrating or reporting a strength in these areas, they have to be self-scoring a 4 or a 5, which would be that they feel they strongly demonstrate that skill or very strongly demonstrate that skill, and not just neutral. So we're really learning a lot about the tool as we go right now. We do know that overall, we're falling at least within the average range, at least at the 50th percentile, where our students and our staff are rating themselves. More often than not, we're falling above that, but we're like Dr. Newkirk said, we're not really ready to talk about how that really stacks up, because what we want to see is just like in MAP, we have trend data over time. We want to see the same thing in this, so.
I appreciate that. The designation of strongly or very strongly is important too, because on the earlier ones,
Yes.
it wasn't, okay.
Yeah, so
Thank
if a
you.
student rates themselves as neutral, it's a 5-point Likert scale that students and teachers are rating. So if the student reports themselves as neutral or below neutral, they would not show up in these percentages, but they would have to score themselves as strongly or very strongly. Yep.
You want to stay there, Natalie, for the next slide?
Your optimism tripped.
And I think also a series of questions that really look at something that's named specifically in the board strategic plan, and that is a sense of belonging. So this next slide here really focuses on that, so you can see those belongingness, and this came up in our building level presentations last month, where they are focused on this. They have strategies for improving this, whether it's giving kids access to extracurricular activities, or making sure that they're doing things within their classrooms or buildings to build that sense of belonging. So you can see the scores for our 3 through 5 students, and then our 6 through 11 students. And you can see on the right-hand side some of those national norms. So in grades 3 through 5, overall as a district, we're in that 76th percentile. And then at the 6 through 11, we're at that 53rd percentile. Natalie, did I screw anything up or
No.
make any mistakes?
You're good.
And again, this is new data, so we spent a lot of time really looking at this, saying like, what does this mean? Looking at the questions. So we have another training coming up at the end of January. We'll kind of go through all this data again and kind of say like, all right, now that we have a firmer understanding of what these questions are, how students are answering them, what is this really teaching us, and how can we change our instruction, our instructional practices in order to build some of these skills.
And so I think that helps hopefully shape a picture of how, with this new tool, we're learning what potential blind spots we have that's being exposed so that we can start looking at strategies to address them. And again, one of the things that we showed you a few slides ago was the 5 Essentials survey. And as Dr. Newkirk shared, it's a statewide normed assessment. So when you looked at that safety slide, you see some of those numbers. Those are consistently normed across the entire state for every school district that qualified enough respondents to participate in the survey and have their data published. All right, sorry, Brett.
Yep, no problem. One thing that we are starting to see emerge from this data is that there are, again, just like there's achievement gaps, there are some gaps in this sense of belonging as well. So on this next slide, what you can see here is breaking down some of the demographics of that. So you can see our sense of belonging in grades 3 through 5, 76% of our white students, but only 65% of our black students are reporting the same thing, that sense of belonging. So these achievement gaps are happening on the social emotional side as well. And that really begs the question is like, what is the antecedent and how do you intervene, right? So do students have a lower sense of belonging? And that means that they're not engaging in their academics. That sense of belonging can also impact attendance, discipline, and a host of other variables which are hugely important for student success. So looking at some of those achievement gaps within SEL is really instructive for us figuring out like what is the best way to make sure that all of our students are feeling that sense of belonging, and then they're accessing their education to the greatest extent possible. So that is one of the things that we're starting to see emerge. Anything else you want me to say on that one?
No, the questions behind sense of belonging have to do with both relationships and interactions with adults as well as peers.
I'm gonna keep us moving. All right, activity participation. Again, this is, as Tom talked about, we are esports thing. When we can get kids involved, they're more likely to come to school. We see less attendance issues. We see greater emphasis in monitoring of their grades. There's a whole host of these positive impacts of getting kids participating in some of our activities. So we log our activities 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring, because that's kind of the activity seasons. And you can see here, during the pandemic, we saw the lowest levels I've ever seen of activity participation because we didn't have them, right? So, and then we were really worried about a bounce back, right? So were we gonna get kids kind of opting out? We knew we were getting kids opting out of turning on their cameras during COVID and remote learning, but were we gonna get kids back in school and committed to their extracurriculars, which we know to be hugely beneficial to them? And I can say that we have seen those rebounds. Do we see it across all levels? No, we do not. We still see some of those participation gaps with our students and some of our student demographics. So we have seen overall as a district us bounce back to pre-COVID levels in terms of activity participation, but we have not closed all those gaps. And quite frankly, we weren't looking at those gaps prior to COVID. We were just kind of saying, all right, we got about 58% of our students that are participating in extracurricular events. All right, that's great. But we weren't really disaggregating that to really look at who was participating and where might some of those gaps be. So we've started to take a closer look at that. I know the high school in their presentation last month shared with you some of the work that they're doing, but we look at this as well. So we see this as a great strength, but also as we've got some opportunities and some things to work on in terms of making sure all of our kids have access to those really fun things in school. And this is for all levels, so elementary, middle, and high school. Obviously, the volume of activities and opportunities accelerate as you move through our system, but we have them at all levels.
Is 24, 25 low just because we haven't had a full year?
Oh, yes, that was an important note we wanted to make. My apologies, that's
have
my
no school
note.
year.
Rob, thank you very much. I appreciate that. The dip you're seeing is due to the fact that we still have 2 other kind of seasonal windows that have not come through yet.
So the kids have not participated in something right now, doesn't mean they're not going to later.
All right, so this doesn't include anything winter
Complete data.
or spring, and we have a lot of those activities. Yeah, there's no need for alarm to see the line go down quite yet.
What's it? That's
So
already
we'll
good.
touch
though,
back
right?
in the spring. Yep. All right, and then there's a host of opportunities around access. And access can be a host of different things, but I'll talk about a few of those pieces. So I have about 5 pieces of different data to show you around access. And again, these are things that we look at to make sure that we're providing our kids access to their education, right? So if a kid's not accessing it, it's really hard to have them be as successful as we want them to be. So one of those is looking at discipline. So we look at our discipline rates, how that is playing out within our school. We pay a special attention to suspension data, right? Suspension is when we are telling a kid, you can't access your education. So the school system is saying that. So we want to make sure that we're intervening, that we're providing interventions all along the way to keep kids in school, right? That's our ultimate goal, is that kids learn. We want them in school, we want them learning. The best place to do that is within their classroom, not in school suspension, and not certainly at home. So looking at those discipline rates, we do see some discrepancies by race, and that is something that we really look at. It's especially troubling when it comes to suspension rates. Bullying is a part of those things, so this is kind of a check-in for us. As a board, we've had previous conversations about this. So far this year, and this data I think was pulled on the 6th or the 9th, I can't remember, one of those 2 dates. We pulled this data. So far this school year, there's been 1,010 total discipline incidents within Batavia Public Schools. So this is pre-K through grade 12. That encompassed 436 total students. So that's a very small percentage of our overall student population. Again, I like to, when we're talking about student discipline, it really is a small percentage of our kids. Most of our kids come to school, they do what they're supposed to. We have really good kids here in Batavia, and sometimes kids make mistakes, and that's okay, and they're involved in a discipline incident. We don't like to see that happen multiple times. We definitely don't like to see instances of bullying, harassment, or intimidation within that. We have a new reporting system, as we've discussed at board meetings in the past. We have a new way of tracking these bullying incidents that we're focused on. We break them down into much finer detail than we ever have before to kind of track those things. So far this year, we've had 8 incidents put into our system to take a look at. 4 of those incidents were related to something in kind of the catch-all categories of protected class. So this could be LGBTQ status, this could be race, this could be religion. There's a whole host of protected class situations there. So there's been 4 of those incidents. There were 2 others that didn't fall into any of those categories but still fell into bullying. And then 2 where we went through the bullying investigation process, but they remained unfounded after going through that process.
What is the check on this? Like, I'm kind of, out of 1,010 total incidents, only 8 would be logged in under the protected class. Seems a bit low. What are we doing to verify? Does that not seem low to you?
Yeah, I think it's low, but I think we're doing a lot of things where there's a lot more attention on this, so I think that it's a new reporting system, so.
I think also sometimes some of the discipline infractions that might be considered to be rather egregious may not necessarily fall under the bullying definition as it's outlined, but it results in other fairly serious consequences and may be categorized under something else, such as like school violence, you know, and it may not have been necessarily deemed that it was the infraction was related to something having to do with one of those protected class areas, or rather the behavior was deemed where it's still being addressed in a rather serious manner, but it fell under a different disciplinary code.
Not bullying, or is that what?
Right. But it's very possible that some of these cases still could have resulted in one of those suspensions that you saw on the previous table, in the previous slide, because it was still deemed to be a very serious infraction. It just, with the labeling of and categorizing of the different situations, it may not.
So when we've talked about like data on this type of stuff, so when we're interested in knowing if we're having specific type of issues, like if you mentioned like LGBTQ+, are we able then to keep track if it's not just under bullying incidents? Are you guys keeping track of like, well, there are other incidents that aren't classified as bullying, but they are related to like LGBTQ+? Are you tracking that?
No, not that way. This is the only thing that, the bullying category, because of the rules in the state of Illinois, are the only thing that we're really doing to that great extent in terms of disaggregating kind of those reasons why.
There's no way to know like if a reported incident, that we're tracking the actual like numbers of reported incidents that have to do with this type of issue.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I guess that's a little concerning to not know what the big picture looks like, and that's not gonna fall in under any of these things.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that too, like, if there's 1,000 incidents for discipline, maybe that's what we need to be focused on instead of just the bullying category.
Okay, maybe we can.
Well, I'm making note of the question right now, so we can.
Yeah.
I think your point, I think I understand your point, like, and I'm gonna paraphrase just to see if I make sure I understand it, is the bullying number's low because potentially it's related to the state-defined, definition of bullying, and therefore you follow a certain state process. There may be of these other 1,000 elements that have a component of, but don't rise to the level of state-defined bullying, but they have a component related to a protected class.
Yeah, like I think as a
Right.
district and as a board, it would be important for us to understand what kind of racism we're dealing with, what kind of homophobia we're dealing with, and if they're keeping track of that, and so we have an understanding of what's going on in the schools. I think that's where that data is important to have, but it's not necessarily captured here, is what I'm understanding.
Okay, understood.
So when students are involved with bullying, obviously I wouldn't want to go to school and experience that, so it's an access issue. We want to make sure students feel that sense of belonging and that they're able to access their education. The next piece of data that we'll look at pretty quickly here is EL exit rate. So a student takes, who is identified as having another language other than English spoken in the home. We screen them for EL services and then provide those services if needed for those students. And then annually, the state requires an access test. So that's right after break here, we start access season. And it is a season. It's a very complicated test. It involves speaking, reading, writing, listening, all of those pieces. And students need to score a composite 4.8 in order to exit from those services. So it's really important because sometimes you're missing part of your core instruction or other pieces of your day as an elementary student. Sometimes you're missing electives if you're a middle schooler or high schooler. So we want students to be able to exit as quickly as possible, which brings them up to that English proficiency so that they can access their classes and that They don't have to give up some of those things in order to develop those skills. One of the greatest areas that you can see that we've been focusing on is that 4th, 5th grade level. So really, that's been a lot of our work with our EL team. Jen's done a lot of great work, Jen and Ming, with our EL teachers to really make sure that we're capitalizing on that 4th, 5th grade exit. So that's a really great window for our students to exit. They might have come to us with, Spanish or Farsi or one of the other 37 languages that are spoken here in Batavia as a kindergartner, but we want to make sure that their English proficiency is there so that they can pass that test, and they don't have that kind of annual access testing window that they're going to experience every single year. And then we monitor them once they do pass that access test. We monitor them for several years after that to make sure that they're maintaining those skills as well. So some good data here to celebrate, but we want more.
And I think what's important to remember too, if I just real quick, Brad, is students when they're in this particular program, that spring becomes a hellacious season of testing, which doesn't exactly make a kid feel like I want to go to school. And that's the travesty of it. They go from access testing to IAR testing. If they're in high school, then they have to do math testing. Thank you. And then we have, state mandated testing in high school. They'd be doing the same things, and then they got to take the ACT this year, but previously they were taking the SAT, right? So it's just this second semester for some of our students can be a brutal season of just test after test. We're working on ways to make that the better experience for our students, but unfortunately it's unavoidable given certain mandates that we're required to follow in terms of the state, right? But just wanted to share that perspective. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Great. Next is looking at advanced coursework. So this is just some of the classes that we're taking a look at. So on the left there, again, this is really small, I'm sorry, but is our 4th grade high ability. This is a math class, and in 4th grade we do compacted math. So students take 4th and 5th grade math in 4th grade at the elementary, and then they take 6th grade math in the 5th grade. So that kind of compacted math sequence, we want to make sure that students have access to that, who need to have access to that advanced coursework. So you can see some of our numbers over time. We've really put in some changes to really make sure that we're not missing some students. So we have 3 staff members who work in this area, and they serve 2 schools each. So every other day, students are receiving instruction with their teacher, and then the next day, they're on a video screen, on a computer screen. So these are our students who are kind of in a challenging learning environment, but they're great motivated students. We have started working with all of our 3rd grade students, so they work with every single 3rd grade student. And the reason that we do that is to make sure that students who don't perform well on math, that we're really taking a look at each kid and see who are those creative problem solvers, who are the kids that would most benefit from this program. You can see that some of those changes have really bumped up some of our numbers, but we still have a lot of work to do. What we look at this is, do these numbers match our general demographics? And the answer is no, they do not, right? You can see that we've historically had a pretty predominant population of boys in this class. That's balanced out a little bit, but we have other discrepancies as well. So this is something that we take a look at and make sure kids have access to that high level of math. You have 2 sections there for Rotolo, both honors ELA and advanced mathematics. You can see some of those same gaps still exist. So, one thing that we're really excited about, perhaps coming in a couple of months to the board is some new math resources at our middle school, which would also allow for us to do that same compacting that we do in 4th and 5th, to do that in 7th and 8th grade. So a student may not be ready for that experience when they're a 3rd grader, but they might be ready for that experience when they're a 6th grader, so that we can accelerate and compact their experience there. We don't want kids skipping math levels, because that creates gaps that are not good long-term. We've done that before, made that mistake many times. But we want to compact their experience so kids can move through the curriculum more quickly.
I was just gonna say that was a particular semi-frustration, it worked out well in the end, but is with one of my kids, like in elementary school, just kind of missed out on the level by like literally a point, right? And then therefore, from a perspective of a parent, their math arc was off until basically they got to high school and could say, okay, I can intentionally take a higher level course and double down and work hard and everything else and succeed at it, but it's a lot harder when you kind of get into high school to try to make that jump.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we want to give students multiple pathways in order to reach whatever goals that they have, particularly around mathematics, because that's such a gateway for a lot of careers and a lot of colleges. So really looking at that, giving them multiple pathways. So we have that 4th, 5th grade. Hopefully soon in the future, we'll have that 7th and 8th grade. And then our high school has that open system. And because of our block schedule, kids can double down on math and kind of get through calculus too, even if they're starting in algebra.
Is there a way to, like, when I'm looking at this and like, I'll just use the 4th, 5th grade and you have 190 total students. Is there a way for us to specify, like, I'll just go in the white student column as 83%? I'm trying to understand, like, in all these numbers, what percentage of the actual students, because that's 83% of the 190, correct? Is that what the percentage is? Is it the total number of students that are in this program?
Right.
Is there a way for us to understand how many students that is, or like the whole 4th, 5th grade white student population, Hispanic population? Because, you know, there's 5% of the Hispanic population that, I mean, that's obviously a shift, but it needs to me, it needs to make sense compared to how many students we have in each of those.
Like a proportionality
Thank
ratio,
you, thank you.
right? Is that what
Yes,
you're talking
yes,
about?
yeah, thank you.
I believe we can,
Yeah, that's no problem.
get that.
Okay.
We can add that.
I always
For the
just wonder
future.
about that. I mean, because that can be good and bad for us, just depending, but you know, when you have lower numbers, it goes
Good way
both
of looking
ways.
at it.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know it for like 4th and 5th grade, like overall, 11% of our students are Hispanic, so about 2% Black. So like, I know our overall district number, but I
Right.
don't know it for that particular.
I would like to be able to like see it kind of side by side to understand the numbers a little bit better, if there's a possibility to do
Yeah,
that.
that's not
Okay.
hard to do at all.
Thank you.
So, and then the bottom chart is looking at AP and dual credit. Again, we talked about how that's a great success in our school and giving kids those experiences, but we still do have some of those gaps with some of our demographics.
So if I could just speak to this particular chart, when you heard me share the strengths when we let out this presentation, I think that is absolutely something we ought to be very proud of in the numbers that I shared with you at the beginning of this presentation. At the same time, it's kind of what Brad was alluding to at the very beginning. Some of our strengths also do still reveal this opportunity for us to get better at something we're doing here, right? And in this particular case, the representation and access to the very program I shared with you is one of the strongest in the strongest in our region. Also has the ability to say, we can tap into more of our students to get into these programs. And so that's been a focal point, which I'm probably gonna steal your thunder if I say it, but I'm gonna say a little bit. As far as goals, access is obviously, we've identified as an opportunity, so one of our conversations with our leadership teams has been, let's start addressing this. How do we increase the access? All right.
So this type of advanced coursework, I think, is important. I look at this data a lot because it really, we have to ask ourselves the question, are we creating barriers for our kids, right? So some kids, this may not be their experience, it may not be their strength, and that's okay. Like, those are kid variables, and I'm A-okay with that. And parents make choices about what their kids are gonna take, and I think that's fine. But when we are creating barriers for students, that's where I have a problem with that. And I think that's where we can make some great headway at getting to greater equity within our system, is like really examining what our barriers are. So with that, a high ability team, that's something we talk about every single time we meet pretty much quarterly, is what are the barriers that we're putting up? Where can we take those barriers down? We've done that with the middle school. Jen and I have met with them multiple times about like placement and curricular issues and placement testing. Like, where are we putting up the barriers for students getting into some of this advanced coursework? Now, one of the great things, and I won't attribute this to myself, but we have a high school that has very few levels and tracking within it. So a lot of high school districts and a lot of high schools are going through the process of detracking, right? So they have maybe 4 levels of an English class. Once you get into one of those levels, it's really hard to get out. We have, I think because of our block schedule, never been highly tracked as a school, which is actually a really good thing towards equality and giving kids a really robust experience. So the best thing that we can do for kids is to challenge them and put them in the highest level course that we can. So that, the data has shown that. I did my own little dissertation on that. It shows that too. Like when we give kids a challenge, they rise to that challenge and their growth exceeds what we could even think that they would do. So that's very common in the data. So when we're putting up barriers to kids getting in some of those courses, that's where as a system we really need to examine that, which is why we look at this data. I'm glad it's a part of the board's strategic plan because it really forces us to ask that question, where are these barriers coming from? And if they're from us, what are we gonna do about it? So I think this is good work and things are happening all over the district, I think, to really examine this and make sure that our kids have access to these things. Which goes back to achievement gaps, because all this data is intertwined, right? We can't take one piece of this and just kind of like say, this is a great celebration, or this is a concentration, here's what we're gonna do to fix it. Is like, if our kids don't have that academic background from elementary school and middle school, then they're not prepared to take these classes. And we would be setting kids up for failure, and that's not what we're about. We're about giving kids challenge. So our whole system has to move in that arc of access. And I think that's a really important concept for us to keep focusing on and looking at data around, is giving kids access to that. And that means giving them strong academics and core instruction in elementary school, giving them those opportunities in middle school to jump levels or to compact work, and then really giving them those experiences in high school. Another big thing that we've been talking about recently is attendance. So a huge number of kids post-pandemic have fallen into chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism by the state is defined as absent 10 or more % of the previous 180 days. So in a school year, you know, we have about 180 days, so these kids are absent about 18 days out of a school year. So if you think about that, that's a significant amount, and it is an access issue, because if you're not at school, you're not truly accessing your education. Do kids stay home because they're sick? Absolutely. Do kids stay home because of this, that, or another, or college visit? Absolutely. But when kids can be at school, we want them at school, because we know that's where they're gonna learn. So really taking, excuse me, a look at chronic absenteeism is something that's really important for us. If you read our district communications, if you read your building communications, you'll see a focus on attendance. It's because oftentimes these patterns are established in early elementary school, and then they never get out of these patterns of not attending school. And this disproportionately affects students from underrepresented minorities and different classes. So we want to make sure that all of our kids are getting the most out of their education. So it is something that we're focused on, something we're trying to communicate with our families about, because they play a huge role in getting our kids to school. But our teachers do a great job of making a point for our kids to come to school and give them opportunities and excitement about coming to school. I think they do a great job with that. When a kid's absent, I think it's great to talk to them about what happened, are you okay? Welcome them back into that school environment. So they play a huge role in getting our kids to school. That's something we're really focused on. You can see more of a breakdown on the next slide of students who are chronically absent. Again, going back to some of those gaps. And when a kid's not here, we can't teach them. So we reviewed 3 strengths. Our 3 strengths are some of our growth trends. We're headed in the right direction. We're giving kids multiple pathways when they exit their K-12 education, and then our students are reporting a sense of safety. But all of those things are double-edged swords where we can make improvements within them as well. So there are academic things that we need to focus on. There's a sense of belonging, which is kind of codependent or comorbid with that academic success. And then there are definitely things within our system looking at access to their education that we need to address as well. So the board's strategic plan has a lot of metrics in it, and you didn't even give them all in this presentation. We tried to roll through it pretty quickly, so we weren't here till midnight. But it's really important work. It's really good that we're doing this work with DMG, because I think that next phase is we have all this data. Let's set some really clear measurable targets about where do we want to head from here. So I think this is a good baseline. We'll give you as much information as possible, but really setting some of those targets is going to propel us into the future and give us a little bit of focus. Tom, do you want to talk about some of the other work?
Yeah, so I'm bringing us home. Brad, thank you very much. And so before we talk about the additional work that's occurring that supports all of this, the one thing I wanted to mention is, board, if you think back to what was presented to you in November, if you're now seeing some of the connection, hopefully you can kind of, it's like reading a book, you're starting to tie in one chapter to the next now. When you heard some of our principals, for example, talking about how they're trying to create, they're focusing on their panorama data or 5 essentials about how people feel in their building, it's all related to the things, because we've been having data conversations as a leadership team. And so that's what's created a certain level of consistency that we're trying to make sure happens, whether we're talking about our building or all of our buildings. All right? Okay, so just to highlight some of the additional work that's going on here, you have this in your packets in front of you. You can see this, and you can, I know you all know how to read, so I don't want to regurgitate any of this, right? But I think what is really important, why we wanted to share this particular slide is, over the 18 months, 19-ish months I've been here in this district, some of this work here has come from feedback because of the board's conversations, feedback we've received during our strategic planning process last year, and other processes we go through. I mean, you see here, we talk about our collaborative structures. We've had some incredible discussions and conversations that are starting to now transform into what our next action steps are going to look like. And that has been I would hope that my colleagues, including Mr. Ray, would agree. We've been very collaborative about how we want those conversations to look. And it's not always like, hey, we all agree on the first idea or first thing that's been said. There's certainly been really good discourse around that. But I think it's been done in a super respectful, thoughtful, student-centered manner. And we're talking about ways how we can effectively execute some of these ideas and strategies and plans that we're going to be trying to push forward. All right. So when you take a look at this, I think it's really critical. And you look at the list of partnerships. That was what we could try and fit into one slide. But as you probably know, I usually send you in my weekly updates. We have partnerships like galore everywhere in this community, and then that'll be something I speak briefly to in my closing comments for the evening's board meeting. In January, we do have our operations technology and business leaders that will provide the board with kind of like a follow presentation that's going to go into more detail about some of the work that's supporting all 3 of our district strategic plan areas. And the reason we separated this is, one, we didn't want to overwhelm anyone with the information and the initiatives that are happening, all right? Because secondly, it will require some level of depth of explanation, because their particular data sets, and I applaud them for this, the data that they're going to use to hold their work accountable is not anything that currently was in our system, right? What we're pulling for you that had to do with safety, academics, our environmental climate for our students and our staff and our parents, that's already been built by the state. A lot of that data is required by the state. When we talk about operational uptime from a technology standpoint, one of our building standpoints, the metrics we're going to use in converting from cash flow to all digital payment flow, there is no data or metrics on that. So I do want to just share preemptively, I really appreciate the time and effort that those teams and their departments have gone through to try and show that they're part of the solution in getting us to move forward as a district as well. All right, and then, this particular last part is board. This is the first time we've done this probably in a lot of years, from what I understand, where we've given kind of the state of the union from a building level perspective and a district-wide perspective. Please know, we are open to the feedback that you would like to give us on how the structures of our presentations went these past 2 months. If you liked where it was and how it was delivered and everything we did, great. Then anticipate a very similar presentation format in May and in June. If there are some suggestions you have, please don't hesitate to share that with me. If you could give me that feedback by January's board meeting, so we can begin working on any suggested changes, and then you as a board can have that conversation. So at that board meeting, I'll have a discussion item on here for you to review board presentations, so you all can discuss it, and then provide us a consensus on what you want to see, if there's any changes to be made. Does that sound good to everybody? Awesome. All right, and then to conclude, my final thank yous to Brad, Steve, Tony, Holly, Cindy, and everybody else whose hands went into helping make the presentation happen tonight. We were kind of like, we were all like fretting over details, and we're like, all right, we gotta just let the project go now, and just present it and get our feedback. All right, I'm done rambling. That was rambling.
I have a couple comments. So one, I want to say thank you to the team, everybody that put this together. This is a lot of information. And also, last board meeting, we had the principals in. They gave a similar type presentation, condensed. I kind of have three thoughts. First, I love that we're doing this because we're looking at data. And when you talk about transparency, I think the fact that we're sharing this shows that there is an increasing level of trust, because we're willing to show that there are areas that we can grow, and that we're all in this together. And you can't grow unless you acknowledge there's area for growth, so I appreciate that. I will say, I'll just give you some of my feedback right now, Tom, what's top of mind. And I know a lot of this data is new, so there isn't context, but like RJ, one of his comments struck a nerve with me while we were talking was, whenever I look at data, I'm always looking at trends, like how are we doing? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? But then I'm also looking at, like, how do we compare, like you said, like, is 50% good? Is it bad? Like, I'm always like, if I want to be a smart guy in a presentation, a sales guy gives a number, I'm like, so what? Is 50 good? Is it bad? It could be terrible. How does that compare to the national average? How does it compare to our peer schools? You know, I know every district is different, but we probably have some that we sort of can benchmark against. So for future presentations, I want to, or even if we're saying we think we should be here, this is what we're shooting for, I would kind of like to see where we're in relation to that goal. And then the last comment was, and this also relates to last board meeting, is this is great, but it's a lot of information, and it's embedded in the middle of a board meeting, which intrinsically are very long. And I kind of always feel like we're sort of getting to the end, we're sort of rushing because we can kind of feel the fatigue setting in. And this is obviously the board that we want to discuss this, but I almost feel like this is sort of where we're really kind of opening things up for the community to kind of see how we're doing, that it almost would necessitate like a separate board meeting where this is the primary thing we're talking about. So I don't know what that looks like, if in certain months of the year we have 2 board meetings or not, but I want to give these presentations the energy, the focus that they deserve, and also to make sure that it's not like a marathon session where everyone's starting to run out of gas because it's 9 o'clock and we still have 10 agenda items to get through. So again, that's just something I'm thinking. I'm sure I want the other board members to think about. I think that would be good. And then I guess the last part I'll also say is there is a lot of data. If you look at the 5 essentials or the report card, I mean, you can go, there's just so much information. And, you know, I'm familiar with a lot of this, but a lot of this, I don't live this every day. And so I would throw to the board, like, I think maybe for a workshop, it could also be good for the community if, like, we had, like, an education on, you know, we're talking about all these things. Like, let's talk about what they are, how they came about, what these different acronyms mean, just like an education on these, because it can be pretty dense information, and if you don't really understand it, I mean, you can get kind of lost in the acronyms a little bit. And so that's my 4th point, is I just think that might be something for the board and the community in general, if there was an appetite for it, that just to help us understand. So when Brad's making a presentation, we all sort of have a familiarity with this, to have a deeper understanding of what we're talking about.
I would have liked to have had this handout like Friday. Now, I'm not saying maybe we're printing it out at 2 o'clock this afternoon, don't know. But you know how I like data and stuff. So I would have liked to have had time to have like looked at it beforehand to kind of get an idea of the numbers and stuff like that. But, no, doesn't matter to me anymore. But that's just, you know. But thank you. It was, I like that kind of information and stuff.
My only comment is I appreciate all the effort and time
Yeah.
that was taken into this.
That was a
And
lot.
really, since I've been on the board, this is the first time we've really seen anything of kind of like substance that we could bite our teeth into and feel like these are kind of like backed up. And there are questions, don't get me wrong, right? But like, there are things that have been talked about over the past of like, where do we sit in relationship to this, this, and this? And how are different kids and communities kind of benchmarked against ourselves? You know, and so I appreciate the time and effort. And one of the things, that was kind of like one of the things we talked about at kind of your interview, Tom, was like the new superintendent coming in was like, we want somebody that can come in and kind of really give us an honest assessment of like where we are. What we're looking at. But the fact that this is all kind of data-based is even better because you feel like that there's information you can kind of trust and work with.
And that was my answer to you in the interview process.
So.
Because we need to look at our data.
Right, and which I don't know how comprehensive we were at before. I'm sure it was there, I just think it wasn't here, right? It was kind of understood in the parts and pieces below, so, thank you. So we'll take Aaron's 3 comments, and he doesn't have to do any more homework between the next meeting and now.
Get it done right now before the break.
By the way, those were my same 3 comments too.
Oh, wow, we didn't even
Right,
talk.
times 2.
Oh, there you go.
What he said.
What he says.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
For the questions.
Thank you.
All right, we now move on to board actions. So item 7.1, Josh, you will walk us through the appointment of independent auditors.
All right. So annually, we have to appoint an auditor for our financials. And for the past 10 years, we've kind of rinsed and repeated and used the same company and the firm, and they've done a nice job. But this year in the business office, we decided to put out a formal request for a proposal to see what's out there. You know, you don't know what's out there until you ask the question. And we put out the proposal for audit services and got 3 very good responses back. And one of them, you know, stood above the rest. And I actually have someone here with me today, which is very nice of Don to come here. But Lauterbach and Ottoman was by far the best proposal that we saw, both from a financial standpoint and also from a process standpoint. And did you want to come up and, all right, come on up. So Don, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Don Shaw. I'm a principal at Lauterbach and Damon. I'm also a proud Batavia resident, so I am especially thrilled to be working with Tony, Josh, and the team this year, so.
And that was not in the packet, by
Right,
the
okay,
way.
fair.
And we were just kind of sitting around, and we were waiting for Tom actually to get there, and kind of as a joke, it was like, well, who would the farthest commute? And that's when we
I
thought.
thought I was bragging about 6 minutes, but I think I was 4th.
You were 4th, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You guys got me beat.
So what you have before you is a 3-year proposal to partner with Don and his firm to do our annual audits. And it actually saves the districts a substantial amount of money, which is
Don't tell him he's standing right
awesome.
next to you.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
We're locked in.
We're locked in. This is happening as long as you approve it. So please approve it. But no, we're really looking forward to the process. And one of the things that was so interesting is when we looked at your guys' proposal, your timeline starts earlier than what we're used to. And we had a nice conversation about the why behind that. And it's going to yield the results that we want, which is to have our audit done sooner than we're getting it currently. So looking forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions for Don or myself?
Any questions? Just a point of clarification, the 2025 through 2027 total amount is all of those years. It's not an annual amount of.
Correct, that's all of those years. And then that savings is projected if we would have stayed with our current firm, you know, for those years, so.
Alright. No other questions? I will entertain a motion to authorize a contract with Lauterbach and Amann LLP for independent testing, independent auditing services for fiscal years 2025 through 2027 in the total amount of $103,950. So moved by Danielle.
Second.
Second by Aaron. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Meadows,
Yes.
Sliger,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
Kilberg,
Yes?
Arlandu,
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Item 7.2, Josh, you get to stay up there. Thank you for visiting us today, sir.
Yep, see ya.
Approval of contract for payment processing system.
I will talk longer on this one, so,
Longer.
get ready. It's longer than that last one. So, want to walk you through kind of the process that got us to this point. So basically, Tom, you like to steal people's thunder. You already alluded to this a little bit with the idea of going more cashless. So, that's what we're gonna be looking at. So, Holly, if you wanna go to the next one real quick. So, with everything, there has to be a good story. So, 15 years ago, Tony was in charge of tech. And his department was charged with a task. And it was to have a digital payment system for registration fees. And there wasn't a system good enough out there at the time for Batavia. So Batavia took the square peg and jammed it into the round hole, and Tony and his team made our current payment system that we're using right now. 15 years ago, my daughter was born, and I'm getting her a permit, and she's driving, and we can all tell different stories of how the world is different from 15 years ago. Our payment system hasn't changed in 15 years. So we're looking to change that tonight, so go ahead. But I think what's important with this is getting feedback from so many different groups. So we started in the business office in May and June, talking with activity directors, building admin, building secretaries about things that they like and things that they don't like, about how they collect payments from parents, and how it's a very cumbersome task. And then talked with RAC and also got to talk at BIC about the process of going to a different format. And what was so interesting about this was, and I know this is a shocker to people, but I don't live in Batavia, and I know that's a check against me, but I get a different perspective. And I was able to present to BIC what my parent experience looks like, giving money to Geneva School District. I know that's hard to say up here, but, and it was interesting, because when I did that,
Get out.
and I know, right? And when Danielle was there with everyone, they're like, whoa, this is what buying things at school could be like. It was a very interesting perspective and conversation. So took all that feedback and worked with our tech department to try to find a solution that would work within our structure and also get all the needs that our families need to buy and purchase things in you know, the modern age, Tony. So we're gonna up that a little bit and presented that to RAC, and here we are today. So, go ahead. All right, so My School Bucks is the platform that we're hoping to use. And what's nice about it is it tackles 3 specific areas all in one. So you can do in-person purchasing, whether that's products at the Corn Boil, or if you just go to the school office and say, I want to pay my registration fees. Here's my credit card, here's my cell phone, here's my watch, whatever. It can do that for you. It invoices parents on those fees. So if you've ever, you know, your kid makes a basketball team and all of a sudden you're like, wait, I'm getting a late notice that I didn't pay my basketball fee because I didn't know there was a basketball fee. This takes care of that. And then it also will house a school store, which is great because Dave manages his own school store with Square at the high school on his own. And it'll make that a lot easier for him. So it'll do all those things in one. It'll also include school lunches and the payments for that, because right now that's another separate system that parents have to navigate. Okay? And My School Bucks is really a one-to-one partner with Power School, and I really just put this up here to show you, this isn't a fly-by-night company. Like, this is one of the industry standards that a lot of school districts use throughout the country to process payments for all things that happen in the school. And what's really great about this one, and it was really kind of the tipping point for me and for Dave's team down in tech, is that it integrates with Power School. So if you don't go on to the My School Bucks portal, you're still able to pay for school fees in Power School, which is an ecosystem that our parents and community are used to. So it'll hopefully make that transition a lot easier. This is just a couple of the features that this allows for. You're able to assign invoices or fees to different groups. So a class, boom, you can send an invoice, or a team, boom, you can send an invoice. It makes that process a lot easier. It automatically notifies parents if there's been a charge put onto a student's account. It also will tell you if balances are running low. You can set up auto payment. But this is a really nice feature. It allows for parents to customize their own payment plan structure. So right now, we offer a payment plan. You set it up in August. You're locked in. You're set. This allows for some customization of that. So maybe you set that payment plan up in August, and then your athlete or your, I keep using athlete because I was a former AD, but maybe your student makes the play, and there's a fee for that. You could add that to your payment structure and just roll it in. Or maybe, hey, it's the holidays, I can't pay as much right now, so you can augment your payment structure to allow for that. So it puts a lot more flexibility on the adults to manage those payments. On the back end, it makes it easier for our teams to reconcile accounts to make sure that money goes into correct balances. And it also is a lot easier to move money from kid to kid in a lunch fund. So just a couple high-level things there. But this is what I'm real excited about, is we're going to have the ability to pay through any medium that parents are used to. And I kind of used the example before, whether it's the credit card, whether it's the app, whether it's your phone, there's a lot of different options. And this interface with My School Bucks also works on multiple platforms. So whether it's your phone or a computer, because a lot of families now, their phone is their main device. They don't have a desktop at home. My kids make fun of me because I go to my desktop to look up things. They're like, pull out your phone. I'm like, but the computer's in there and my office is there. So it allows for us to meet the needs of all the parents in the community. Now, it all comes down to, what does it cost, right? What is this change going to cost? So there's going to be two phases of this. So the first is coming out of this fiscal year, and this is the implementation, what we have to do to get ready for this. So there's two main components here. There's the student fee side, and then there's the food service component of that. We have to buy new devices for the food service, but what's great is that we can use our current food service devices in our main office to do payments for student fees. So we kind of have to buy one, but we're recycling the other. So this implementation cost comes out to about 16 grand. I budgeted 25 grand for implementation, so I'm feeling really good. Now, this is where the cost really comes into play. And I want to take some time and kind of explain this, and please, if you got questions about this, ask. Is what we have here are different buckets of money that we take in. So we have our student fees that are collected in Power School. Currently, we pay about $49,000 to process those fees. With this new system, it will cost a little bit more because we're also paying for software and maintenance of that software. So that comes to 72. For food service, we pay about $60,000 in fees. It would go up a little bit to 71 for this software. Again, it's nice because it's all consolidated. That delta isn't that big. Where the delta comes in is we collect, right, well, I should say in FY '24, we collected $1.4 million in cash and checks. So I like to think about all the little elementary kids walking around with all the envelopes, going to their teacher in the hallway, here's money, here's money. There's not a lot of receipts in that format. It just kind of happens. So that's a lot of money that it's kind of, we capture it, but we're not really sure how we capture it. And this will make that more streamlined. But with that does come a processing cost of about $56,000. And that's assuming 90% of that money would go to this processing system. We're not trying to be Portillo's here. We will still accept cash. Like, it's not that we're going completely cashless, but we're trying to make it easier to do things in a more remote fashion.
You go back.
Of course, go right ahead.
I'm still struggling with the cash and checks. Is that, basically you're taking that and adding it to the student fees? Is that what?
No, that's a good question. So student fees collected in Power School, because I could say we were charged a processing fee for that.
Okay.
That was the processing fee, and that's what it would be.
So the processing fee for the 56,000, that's a processing fee because it's gonna be becoming by credit?
In theory, yes. Yeah, because right now, that $1.4 million is, hey, coach, here's my money. Hey, teach, here's my money. And it gets to the office, and then it gets processed, and then it gets sent to the bank. All of that would be eliminated by using this process.
So the advantage of that is that it reduces money changing hands and what happens
Correct.
occasionally in that process. Nothing bad, just things go awry.
Correct.
And then staff and or teacher and or administrator time in processing and.
100%. And I really think that one point you said there, Craig, was really good. It's eliminating the student from the process, right? I'll just use my own kids as an example. I don't want to give my kids money to then have them give it to their teacher or to their spot. I just don't. Like, that's not they don't need to worry about that. That's an adult thing. Like, let me worry about that. This
But-
allows for that.
You said you still will be able to accept
Of
cash.
course.
So if a parent, and I'm not making any, doesn't have a credit card.
Correct.
Or they will still be able to use
100%.
cash or a
Yes.
check, or
Yes,
that's still an option, okay.
correct.
Oh.
Any more on this one? No? All right. So I just wanted to show you briefly, if you approve this, what the implementation timeline would look like. So we would spend January and February working with my school bucks, training, getting things ready here. We'd spend March training more at the building level, making sure we're ready to go. In April and May, do a soft launch, test the system out, make sure that things are looking good. This is a big lift. There's a lot of areas that this affects. So really, the July, August go live is really about registration first, student lunches that close second, and then everything else kind of falls in line. So if we're not ready for school fees, for athletic fees in August, we'll still do it the old way, but we'll get there. I want to say we'll have it all live, but I don't want to be, too optimistic.
What, you trailed off there?
I don't want to I would love to put it all in July like go live for everything, but I'm trying to be very conservative in my expectations, although I'd like it all to be done in August.
Does this do away with like a school cafe or whatever it is
Yes.
that we use now? We don't do that anymore then,
We would
right?
not do that anymore. That is correct.
For cost for that currently?
Yeah, so if you go back 2 slides,
That's in that.
oh, 1 slide, sorry. Yeah, so the cost for school cafe is 60 grand. And then by replacing this, it would go up a little bit. But what it would do is eliminate, I do school cafe for this, and I do this for this, and it would just be in one hub.
Is PTO locked into this at this time, or is there any plans for them to be able to be incorporated?
So at a base level, what PTO can have is the ability to like do donations through it.
Okay.
So we could set it up where if you want to donate to Grace McWayne's PTO or Storm's PTO, you could do that. That's fairly simple. As you get more nuanced, we could do more, but again, like there's a lot of layers with this, and we've really got to target like the building operation first.
Right.
And from what I understand, a number of the PTOs have kind of moved to their own online
But I think
software system. But
eventually,
that's not a bad.
you go to one place for everything, that's,
Don't they have their own
Correct.
banking accounts?
yeah, I guess depending on what you can set up.
Yeah.
I don't know what the,
Interesting
I'm
premise.
asking. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Tony, any questions?
I'm good.
Since he borderline called you a Luddite today?
I was ahead of my time.
You were.
You were ahead of your time.
I might be completely off base, and I want to hear the other board members. I feel like it's $100,000 convenience expense. Like it's just making things more convenient.
It is.
I would say that it is definitely more expensive. The largest driver of the cost would be processing that additional nearly $1.5 million. And this isn't just a function of convenience. There is a real cost and risk to us continuing to do business the way that we do.
Can you elaborate on that?
With cash,
There's cash and checks,
with cash and checks.
$1.5 million cycling
cash
through our
checks.
systems.
I mean, RJ, a
Which
thought I
is
had
very,
was-
very challenging. I'm not saying that fraud is happening, but it's very, very challenging for our systems to process that money. It's time consuming for both. One, yeah, our students are often involved. Our parents are, and obviously giving money to teachers, to coaches, to secretaries. And like a lot of things have to happen so that we can reconcile those accounts. And our auditors just left, but I would tell you that's the part that keeps me awake at night. Is there's not a whole lot more that you can do there to get more assurance on whether or not that money is finding itself to the right spot. But if we move to an electronic process, it makes things not only easier for everybody, but more transparent and accountable.
And I will add, we'll have families come to RJAC, and they're here for a different reason, and they're like, oh, wait, I have an outstanding bill. And we're like, great. They're like, well, could you take my credit card? No. You can go online, but I'm here. But I have my credit card. Like, there's just that disconnect because I don't carry a checkbook. My wife doesn't carry a checkbook anymore. So that's kind of an option that's not around for a lot of people. A lot of people don't carry cash on them anymore because it's just not the way of the world. So this is a shift to meet the needs of our families as well.
It is. And so for a lot of families, that's the case where we don't use checkbooks, we don't use cash, but we're going on a field trip. And now mom and dad have to figure out how we're gonna get cash to Mrs. Smith, who then is well-intentioned, but she might have handed all the money in for the field trip to Mrs. Jones in the office, but then there's some stragglers that come in a couple of days later and they might sit in her desk and then that check might go on cash for 60
For a long
days.
time.
And like all these things are just, we can make this a lot easier on folks. We won't get it to we're not saying that we're gonna be cashless, but we can make it a lot easier on everybody.
Do you see that you think kind of prompt payment processes would kind of go up because of it? You know, that.
We do struggle with not just prompt payment, but confusing payment. So Josh talked about this a little bit, is the year starts, we pay all the fees that we know about on the front end of things. But sometimes we pay fees that we shouldn't. For example, maybe I expect that my kid's gonna play basketball, so I pay for the athletic fee for basketball, but he decides that he's not gonna play, or she's not gonna play. So now the school district has to credit that money back, and that's a very manual process, one, to figure out who's on the team, who's not, who needs money back, who haven't we collected from. Whereas with a system like this, you kind of pay as you go, kid makes the team, the athletic secretary enters that information, these are the parents that have to pay. Parents get a notification in the system that the payment's due, have a reasonable time frame to pay it, they can put it on a payment plan and go from there. Right now, it's like 1997, so.
I do like the payment plan option and how you can incorporate new fees into that and kind of slide things around, because things do change in families' lives and just times of the year. That's really nice. And that's not something we can do now, correct?
It's not something that we can do easily.
Well, you can do the payment plan.
You
for
can
your
do the
fees.
payment plan at the start of the year,
Right.
but if
Accidentally did
a student joins the e-gaming,
Right.
right, there's a fee with that, but they already set up their payment plan.
You
It's
can't
static.
add it on.
Yeah.
Because I tried that at the beginning of the year one time, I'm like, they say it's so easy, and so I clicked the button, I'm like, oh, okay. No, but then I was locked into it.
Then you're locked into it.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And Tony yelled at me, because the credit card,
The other time.
the other Tony.
So RJ, I had the same reaction you when I saw that. I'm like, this is 90 grand more than our old system, but I want to thank Josh. We had a pretty good conversation today, and I talked to Tom a little bit about it, but I do think there's some costs there that are not reflected because, we're running to the bank, I'm assuming, and things like that. There's time that's not accounted for in that. But I think it's just making us easier to, the BPS1 community interact with us and process things, because this is the way of the world now. Everyone's used to working this way. Anything we can do to make it easier to interact with the community is, I think from their end, it's gonna be a big positive probably, so.
Yeah, the reception at BIC was, I think one of the parents was like, can we just have this now? Like, it was amazing.
I hated having to jump to school cafe and try to remember what the hell that password was.
Yes, I remember that.
I presume there's some sort of parent or family or caretaker education notification component that this is gonna be coming up, and here's this, great little video to watch that
Correct.
explains these things and stuff like that.
Correct. And
Okay.
what we're really talking about here is for the start of next school year. So this is gonna take some time to get ready. It's gonna take a semester to get ready, but that is part of it.
Tony, you just didn't write in planned obsolescence when you did your other one. I guess there is an argument to say, or a question is, like, how long could the system that you had really be maintainable?
Well, we
with
had-
the volume and the scalability and everything else associated with that.
We had plans, actually, we're on the second incarnation of what we had originally developed about 15 years ago. And we, was it?
2020, when we rewrote everything.
Feels longer.
It's like the tennis courts.
And the challenge there is that we struggle with time on the tech team to be able to continue to develop that and that expertise. So it takes us longer to do those sorts of things, and we're competing with all the other priorities that our team is working on. We don't have enough horsepower in our tech department in terms of the capacity for them to actually do that work and keep up with all the other things that are coming in that they have to deal with on a daily basis. So we could build out a system that could do these things. I don't think we could do it as well as, this is their full-time job. This is what they do as an organization. I think we could build those sorts of things out. But it would take us years and years and a lot more, probably more expense than what it's going to cost us.
And I do want to give my team a lot of credit, because they've spent a lot of time trying to keep up with this trend, but it is so hard with everything moving constantly. More ways to pay, more transactional things that happen, it changes every day. Oh, sorry.
These are your rules, not mine.
I want to give my team a lot of credit too, because like a lot of this stuff is not something that you can easily keep up with. We've got 3 people that dedicate their job to development. And we rewrote everything in 2020, but again, it's like you're adding different payment methods, you're adding different banks, you're adding different ways of paying. We want to get this down to like, literally, I'm going to use the bad phrase here, but single pane of glass. We know where to go. It's one spot. Everyone goes there to pay their fees, bills, whatever you name it. It's always here. This is the URL. It never changes. Done. That's the plan. And I think that where we're at currently, like Craig was saying, like, oh, I got to go here for lunch. I got to go here for this and there for that. And I got 15 passwords. Like, that adds to the complication and frustration, I feel, to where now what? So I think, moving towards something that's more centralized, plus all the automations and things that I have on our department side, this will help a lot, not only for the parents, but internal processes and things as well, that hopefully we can kind of get everything into one spot and move forward.
So those 3 people you have kind of slated for development, they would then not worry about this so much?
They wouldn't worry about developing. They do have to still worry about integration and keeping all that working. But the biggest piece of this, like, it knows if you're free and reduced. It knows what classes you're in. It knows what teams you're on. It knows if you made the sports team or not and credit you back. It's all based on automation. So there is some maintenance that'll still happen, but it's a lot easier to maintain that than to actually literally build it from the ground up.
And on that note, it's not just from the tech team, it's maintaining that for all of our administrative staff across the district too. It makes administering this in each of our school offices much easier on those folks as well.
Any other questions? I will entertain a motion to authorize a contract with My School Bucks to manage transactions, including student fees, food services, event ticketing, for an estimated cost of $200,000 for the 2025-2026 school year. So moved by Sue.
Second.
Second by Rob. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Meadows,
Yes?
Sliger,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes. Tony, please lead us on the discussion and information around the estimate for the 2024 tax levy.
Certainly. Holly, would you scroll to the very bottom, please? I'm going to start with the end in mind. And if you go to that graph at the bottom of the report, oh, I'm sorry, the next item. Yeah. I guess this is harder to see than I expected. The end in mind, we're looking in particular here at the red line. And the red line indicates what the estimated taxes have been and what will be for a median value home in the district. So a median value home last year was $380,368. And this year, we expect that number to be $419,000. Properties are appreciating in Batavia and the surrounding areas, but especially in Batavia, very rapidly. And of course, as your home is getting more valuable, you would expect that your property taxes would go up. Fortunately, we've talked extensively during the referendum, we're paying off our debt. And because we're paying off of the outstanding bond debt for school construction from the last 20 or so years, we expect that the property taxes will go down. So the end in mind is property taxes are going to go down for the school district's portion of property taxes in the school district. We have no control, of course, over what the other taxing bodies do, but for a median value home, we expect that they'll go down by approximately $89. And so we're recommending that you tonight adopt a tax levy of $86 million that increases by 4.5%. But that makes no sense, right? If your tax levy is going up by 4.5%, why would our estimated property taxes be going down? And the answer is because in the levy, we're only levying for what the school board has control over. The levy is basically the operating levies themselves, and the bonds that you're paying off are separate. Of course, the bonds and the operating levies combine together to affect all the property taxes that the school district collects from taxpayers. But the total amount is going down. Our levy is going up, but the total amount of taxes that we'll collect as a school district next year will go down. And as I said earlier, the reason why it's going down is because we're paying off our bond debt. And so as you recall, we had extensive conversations during the referendum that we pay roughly $9.2 million per year for that bond debt. It's kind of like maybe a home mortgage payment. We're making the very last home mortgage payment. We made the last full amount of payment last year. This coming levy year, that mortgage payment is going to turn into about $4.5 million. And next year, in the 25 levy year, and we're not talking about that tonight, but just so you know, it will go down even more because that $4.5 million will go away, and we will have paid off our mortgage, and we won't be making any more payments. So, right now, we're asking you to adopt the levy that we have to file with the clerk by the last Tuesday in December. So if I get hit by a bus, Josh, please make sure that happens. Because if you don't file it by the last Tuesday in December, we don't get it. It is a lot of pressure.
That's coming up.
Yeah, that's coming up.
week, right?
This is your last chance to adopt the levy. And as you recall, last month, we did the estimation of the levy, just so that we're making sure that the community knows and hears about it. We built our budget on these numbers when we adopted it in September, so this is the last step in the process. But the reason why we're saying it's 4.5% is that there are still a lot of assumptions that go into how taxes work. It's a very complicated process, and there's a lot of information that has to be collected and filed. We're making estimates as to what these sorts of things will be. Of course, it's easier to estimate it in the aggregate. It's very hard to estimate it on what the impact is going to be on an average home in Batavia. So individual properties, they vary. You know, like you could have your home reassessed upwards or downwards. You might appeal, you might have certain exemptions, there might be certain errors that might need to be corrected. There's a whole host of things that can happen to individual homes. So we're talking about things in the aggregate here. But we expect that the levy will go up by 4.5% to $86 million. The net effect on a median value home in Batavia, some $420,000 this year, will be a tax decrease of $89. Does that make sense? It's a little complicated, but it's good news overall. Now, this doesn't mean that your property taxes, the total bill when you open it, that it's necessarily going to go down. I have no idea what the other taxing bodies are going to do. But our portion of the bill is going to go down.
This is not it's a little off topic, but based on what you're talking about for this year and for next year's estimates, if the referendum had passed, it sounds like you were correct in your assessment that taxes would not have gone up. You still feel good about that? To call you out in front of everyone about something you said.
How's it off topic?
Something you said 2 years ago. It was a forecast you made 2 years ago. So
Or
I'm
more
just-
accurately, he said if we didn't pass the referendum, they would go down.
Right.
Which we're now seeing,
I'm just
which is right.
good.
What has happened in the interim is that because of inflation and because of the housing market in particular, in Batavia, property values have increased at a much more rapid rate, as have our costs. And so taxes have increased faster than I anticipated at the time. And had the referendum passed, we would still be looking at a 4.5% increase this year, more than likely. We would, on top of what we were already doing. Because what we had, we were designing that referendum to be is just filling in the debt as it was rolling off. And so that $9.2 million payment that we were making in prior years was relatively flat, fluctuated a little bit, but not by much. That would continue out for 20 years.
Would have stayed the same.
Yeah.
So right now, because we didn't fill in that debt, we're paying it off. The mortgage payment is almost paid. It's almost done, and will go away. And so now, if and when we need to do a referendum it'll be a tax increase, and it's gonna be more painful
gonna be a lot
than it
more
would have otherwise have been.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to call that out, but
Yeah.
You got more than you've already
he's good
put
at his
in.
job.
Yes.
You said it was made available to the public. Did you get any questions or feedback? And it was for a month's time?
We generally don't get much. And so this is one, I would say more or less, this is a formality because all these assumptions are built into our budget when we adopt it in the fall. So when we adopted our budget in August this year, all these assumptions were essentially locked in at that time. So we'll start talking about next year's levy here pretty soon.
And it'd be good news, because we pay off, depending on your perspective, we're paying off the mortgage, like, to use your lens.
A couple things I need to mention before you take your vote.
Killing me, Smalls.
Where you thought you were done, but you're not.
And
If you
another
scroll all the
thing.
way to the bottom, real quick, there's one new requirement that we're required to disclose, and that's this cryptic law here, if you click on that attachment, Holly.
Which one?
This is an operating expenditures and fund balance. What we have to demonstrate is that we don't hold in our coffers more than 2.5% of the average prior 3 years of expenditures. So basically, right now, we look at the prior last 3 fiscal years, we look at our expenditures, that average is $106 million. We cannot hold in our funds more than 266. Right now, our fund balance is only 52, so we're good. But we have to disclose that by law now before we adopt the levy. And the other thing that I should disclose too is that the actual fund balances as of today, or actually should I say, the actual fund balances as of November 30th are available in the treasurer's report, if anybody was interested in reviewing them. But with that, we're all set to adopt the levy.
But it's 52,000.
52 million. Yep.
52 million. That's awesome. For us.
Okay.
Not here long
I
enough,
will-
you know.
I will entertain a motion to adopt the 2024 tax levy as presented totaling $86 million, which represents a 4.5% increase over the previous year's extension.
So moved.
So moved by RJ. Second by, I heard two.
Aaron,
Aaron,
second.
okay, Aaron. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Sliger,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
All right, thank you. Review of board policy. 8.1.
So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the keys over to Aaron on this, right?
Oh, yes, I think.
But
I'm
you
just
kind
gonna-
of spoke to
You
it
did it
already.
earlier, so.
Danielle wasn't here, I guess, to hear that, but, I mean, just to summarize it again real quick, we reviewed the policy, which is about, communication. Right now, we're doing basically just strict digital communication via email. At the last BIC meeting, there was a request for, some sort of limited form of sending paper home with kids. So the policy committee reviewed it and thought our policy actually had room in there where we could make some minor procedural changes to allow for that. Tom and Holly are gonna work with the administration to gauge what they think that should look back. Come back to with recommendations to the policy committee before our next meeting. We'll review it, we'll see if we need to do a policy change, or if it's just good as it is and we just change at the building level. And then at the next board meeting, Raquel and I will report back on that. Is that accurate?
Yes. To what you said earlier, 100%. Yep.
A
Tom
little
and I were
shorter.
just chatting back and forth. We're gonna, because that's a part of a committee, we're just gonna let it reside in there and not have another one.
Okay.
later. If we
becoming
have
redundant.
specific policy action items, we'll have a separate item and you can just say, hey, of the things we discussed earlier, any further questions?
Sounds good.
Try to streamline it a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. So this time we do have a closed session later, so we're kind of moving the staff and board comments, so we don't have to come back and say particularly to a nearly empty room, since there's no actions today. So, Tom, do you have any, administration comments for this evening?
Yes, just brief. I'd just like to say that I appreciate the work, kindness, and student-centered lens that our BPS family brings to the job every day. The jobs that our people do are not easy, and we wouldn't be facing a shortage not just in our district, because we've brought you MOUs and MOAs to support some staffing needs that we have in our district, but across the state of Illinois, if not the nation. I hope it is clear after tonight that we have an amazing district, and a part of the greatness is acknowledging that our work isn't done, and we're going to keep getting after it. Last night, I was fortunate to be able to join volunteers for the Adopt a Family initiative. Hence my T-shirt tonight. This was given to everyone that was volunteering last evening, so if you're wondering, like, Tom, you've never shown up in a T-shirt. What's going on?
Friday look, I like it.
Voila. Jenna's like, I've never seen you in a T-shirt. This year's efforts, which are organized by the United Way and supported by all of our district's partners, school buildings, and staff here at RJAC, were able to support 170 families, resulting in 345 students receiving gifts and essentials for their needs this holiday season. The line of cars that were pouring out of the parking lot at the Batavia VFW were those families who adopted a family and provided the answers to their wish lists. I want to thank everybody that was a part of that effort last night, and it's another example and reminder of everything I always tell you when I say this is an amazing school district community. All of this also resulted in the largest number of families and students that this initiative has supported yet in all the years it's been running. So what I'm sharing here tonight is why I believe our district will be able to continue to make great strides in serving our students. The kindness, the collaboration, and charity that exists is infectious. I have too many interactions with staff, parents, and students that proves to me we have amazing educators in this district and amazing experiences. So with gratitude, everyone has my permission to take a break when we go into the weekend this Friday at the conclusion of school. And I wish everyone else, I hope you have a wonderful winter break, that people are traveling safely, and that everyone is able to find peace and joy with their family and friends. And for anyone, we'll see you next year.
All right, board comments? Sue, do you want to try to follow that up?
No, I think you did. Christmas, happy holidays, be safe, happy New Year, we'll see you in January.
We gotta start on that side.
Nope.
Yeah.
I get board president
I've noticed
prerogative, my
that.
friend.
All right, so I'm gonna be a little bit longer with my comments this month than I normally am, but hope you'll indulge me here. First of all, I'm remiss here because last month in November, it ended up being a pretty long meeting. And I think we actually went into the next day, Wednesday morning, for that meeting. Many of you were there. But I kind of glossed over something I should have mentioned there, which was I had an opportunity to go to Grace McQueen November 1st, day after Halloween, and visit with their first grade classes. And I mentioned it, but I want to say a little bit more about that. It was a great experience in that I kind of saw the start of their day, and they were actually talking about some pretty interesting topics, things such as homelessness. They were talking about charity. They were working on a sock drive, I believe, collecting socks, and then also about being a good neighbor. So, and the engagement by those kids was, for me, was pretty impressive to see them kind of tackling those sort of topics at that particular age. So, so extend thanks to Mr. Clary, Ms. Manti, and Ms. And forgive me if I say this wrong, Samoji. Yeah, they did an outstanding job. So really enjoyed my time there at Grace McQueen, the first grade. I also want to mention, so most of us, I think, a few exceptions, but most of us were at the IASB Joint Conference, Annual Conference. So I did have an opportunity to go to a couple sessions while I was there, superintendent evaluations, so learned a little bit more about how that's done, and really from a legal standpoint. They had lawyers up there talking about like negotiating contracts and stuff like that. So I didn't participate in the last one. I think I'll be participating in this upcoming one, so it was a great session to learn a little bit more about that process. Board Finance, I talked to Tony about this, but that was interesting. The CFO from U46 was there, and they have a huge budget, 800 million, I believe, was the number. So she was talking about that, so learned a little bit more. Still can't say I'm an expert by no means, but did learn a little bit more about kind of how school finance goes. Evidence-based funding is the term. I know we've used it a lot, obviously, but got a little more detail about that and had a little bit more understanding. So it is a complex topic. So Tony, I appreciate what you do, you and Josh, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. So, and then attended a session on AI, which was really fascinating. And it really centered on the speaker there. He's like, it has really a negative perception. You know, you watch a movie, it's about the destruction of society and stuff like that. So it really has that negative connotation. So he's like, yeah, we got to deal with that. But I guess the message was it's coming. So it's a matter of trying to embrace it and see what we can, how we can use it for the betterment. So for our mission here. So that's kind of the lens I took listening to that discussion. And I know we're already starting, I think I saw a note, we're already starting some of that discussion with the AI technology, and it's complicated. There's a lot of safety, privacy. Dave, I know you're going to be heavily involved in all that, so there's a lot of issues to talk about there, but I think it's something that discussion needs to happen, and hopefully we in Batavia can take that on and use it for its benefit. And that's good. So okay. With that, I just want to say a few thank yous here. First to my colleagues, happy holidays. It was a great year working with you all. Maybe I'm biased, but I think we have a pretty good working relationship here. So enjoy the time. I want to wish you guys happy holidays and happy New Year. And I'm going to remiss a little bit also. I give a little shout out to Craig. You know, as the role of board president, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that sometimes I don't even know. I find out later after the fact, oh, like Craig had done this or was involved in this discussion. So, and there's way more than that he does that I know the community may not be aware of as well. But just shout out, thank you, Craig. It's not an easy role, so appreciate your efforts there. Okay, admin staff, thank you all for all you do. My words of appreciation, they're not going to do justice for all your efforts as we saw here tonight, a team effort, so thank you. Happy holidays, happy New Year. To the students, enjoy the break, get the rest, spend time with family and loved ones, and let's come back in the new year ready to do great things. And to the community, thank you for your support, thank you for your trust as we try to get better each day and do our part to continue making Batavia a great community. Thank you.
Well, I have to follow that. Wow, okay, just have your notes there and reiterate them. I have a lot of the same sentiment. So, like I always do, I want to thank everyone who reached out to the board, either via email or comment or came to the meeting tonight. We need to hear your voices, so we appreciate that. I want to thank our BPS partners for their partnership. I want to thank the staff and admin. We had the last two meetings, we've had very in-depth conversations about very complex subjects. I think everybody here that I work with on that level, they can almost always anticipate my questions. How can you simplify this so I can understand it? And I thank you for doing that, because I think part of the transparency is making sure that the community can understand complex subjects, and I think we try to do the best job we can with that. I want to congratulate the BPS esports. I think a couple of the coaches are still back there. That's great to see. You know, one, I love hearing from the kids, and two, I love to hear that participation is increasing. that means we're doing something right, in my opinion. So that's very exciting. And then I just want to congratulate all our students, athletes, musicians, thespians, artists. I mean, this year I was blown away. It seemed like everywhere you looked, Batavia students were being recognized for outstanding achievement. I mean, you look in the back and there's the art students are being recognized for their success in an art competition. Behind us is some grade schools with their art. So it's, I mean, our kids are achieving. I mean, there's definitely work to do, but they are achieving, and it's just really inspiring. So a couple of things I did since the last board meeting is I participated in. I went to the Rotolo Middle School band concert, 6, 7, and 8. That's always a great time. I went to the fall musical. I'm not only I'm always impressed by the actual performances, but the staging, the lighting, the direction. That's all student-led. That's amazing. You know, it seemed like every athletic team was achieving at a high level, and I have to mention the football team. Again, another amazing accomplishment of second place. I think in Batavia we're a little spoiled that we just assume, you kick it off and we're going to make it to the semifinals. That's not a normal thing. And what I will remember from that night, it was a very cold night in Bloomington, a late night. The team performed with excellence. It was maybe not the result we wanted, but they competed to the end. But also what struck me was our rivalry with our opponent that night has gotten kind of heated, and the kids' ability to maintain their calm and demonstrate sportsmanship was to be admired. But also, what struck me was all of our students, so the flag corps, the band, the dancers, the cheerleaders all performed. So it really was a celebration. All of Batavia demonstrated. We put our best foot forward that night for the whole state to see. So that was great to witness. So everyone's doing great, and I've thanked a lot of people. I do want to thank a few people individually. I want to start by thanking our secretaries, Teresa Rodriguez and Cindy Rodriguez. If you come to the RJAC or you call Teresa Rodriguez, is usually the person that will greet you or answer the phone. And she's a pleasure to work with, and I can't really think of a better ambassador for that initial connection for people. And then Cindy down at the end there with the purple sweater on, she is the board secretary. And, we could not function without her. She is a tremendous advocate for children and for people in the district. And I think I could probably speak for the whole board to say that we really do appreciate all you do and represent. So thank you for your hard work. I want to thank all the partners in the district. Every month we have people that make donations. And then anytime I'm watching our kids succeed, there's like an army of parent volunteers behind them. That's amazing. And so like one of those organizations would be PTOs, and I've gotten to know the HC Storm PTO president, Amber Walker, and I've only met her virtually because they do their meetings virtually, but she's very impressive. She's very passionate about serving that community, and I just want to thank all those PTOs for what they do. I want to thank our superintendent, Tom Kim, for what he does. I know he busts his tail to do what's the best he can for this district, so it's appreciated. And then as Mr. Arlando said, I want to thank my fellow board members for their service. I really do appreciate working with you. It's an honor to serve with you. What I really love about our board is we're curious and we're passionate about students, putting students first. And as Rob said, I think we have a good group, and we don't always agree, but I think we all are doing this for the right reasons, so I appreciate that. And then I would be remiss if I didn't thank a few more people, and that's my wife and children. Kathleen is my wife, Emma, Jake, and Lily. It's my wife's birthday this week. I miss a lot of things, and I would not be able to do what I do without her support. So I want to thank them for allowing me to do this work. And then with that, I'll just say, I wish everyone a happy holiday, and look forward to seeing everyone in the new year.
I echo some of what you guys said, not everything. You guys, the people can figure and decide what they want, that I echo. Thank you for thanking people. I thank them as well. The stats and the data that you guys all put together, this team, really thank you for that. It's great to have a baseline. I'm really excited about it. It's nice to have something measurable. I think for the past few years, we've kind of gone with our guts and kind of like the eye test. Of like, it feels like it's better, it seems like it's better. To have that actual data is really, really nice. I'm excited to see what we do with it. Thank you guys for dealing with my questions. I appreciate it. You too, Tony. Mrs. McKnight, thank you for saying what you said. I appreciate it. And just hope everyone has a good holiday. That's it.
I missed what you said. I missed what you said.
It's recorded.
Okay, yeah.
For posterity.
Echo everybody. I don't have anything prepared, but I'm thankful for the data and the progress that we're making, the conversations that we're having. I don't know if you gave a report for the equity committee, but you know, while I'm listening and looking at the data, one of the things that we discussed, that was discussed at the equity committee was the stories behind the data, right? And so like this is part of that work, and I'm proud of us for having the conversations and thankful for you guys putting together. I don't want to stop short on that. I don't think we will. I just really want to, encourage to get those stories and that better understanding, as Brad was kind of, going to, is, are we setting up these roadblocks? Are we doing that? And we won't really know, I don't think, just by data. That's going to be those like boots on the ground, working with other organizations, working in the community, and really getting those stories. So I'm really interested in that. I'm interested to see what we come back with in spring, but I really think this is great to have something to start off with. And it was really interesting. I know that's a lot of work, so thank you. You guys have put together a lot of what we've discussed. There is some stuff that I would like to talk about more, and I think we still need to have a little board meeting on data, especially when it comes to bullying and whatnot, but to get a little bit more understanding. But it was really nice to hear what you guys put together and kind of have a better understanding of it, and just kind of as it meshes with the work that I have seen, that like the equity committee and other things, I do see it kind of coming together, and there is that progress. Yes, there's a lot of work, but like we talked about, it's not, we've made these mistakes, but this, or, whatever. It's, hey, we've learned this and we're moving forward, right? And so that's gonna be that growth mindset that we have. So I just wanna acknowledge that. Other than that, I guess, just everyone have happy holidays, safe New Year. Please rest. With all of the work that we've talked about, please rest, please rest. And that means like not trading responsibilities. It doesn't mean more housework. It doesn't mean all that. Rest. Do nothing, like if you can, just do nothing. And then come back after the new year and we'll have some energy. So, thanks.
All right, my couple of notes, really is great, meeting today. Appreciate everybody's time and effort. Of course, I appreciate all the work and effort that teachers went into to be able to support the data that came in. Good, bad, or indifferent. It was important, and we recognize the efforts you guys all put in to make it better. So the couple of other things, I want to thank Drew. I had to sit down with Drew, and we shared probably a much longer discussion than he was expecting at Starbucks the other day. I just kind of want to make sure you guys are aware that we met and chatted for a little bit about a couple of things, particularly kind of around the last board meeting that was of some concern. And then we're starting a new thing before our board meetings on a regular basis of meeting with the BEA, with Tom as a representative of the administration, and myself, and probably one other board member before the meeting. So we had our kind of first one today, just to kind of create a line of communication that could be a little bit kind of informal, to be able to have those open kind of discussions, but it's not specifically like necessarily board related. It's just a chance to chat a little bit. So Aaron joined me and everybody today. And so we'll be kind of opening up other opportunities for you guys to come as you find interested. There's no set agenda per se. We may just maybe have a meeting just to sit there, and today we had pizza and burgers, or we might have, pitas at our next one. So there was a comment in the meeting today, in our discussion today. The other thing is I don't know how the world kind of gets out there, but I'm running for re-election. I kind of want to let everybody know that I ran into a little snag, but it kind of worked itself through. Someone actually objected to my petition. So I want to make sure everybody double checks their petitions, because I did not, and left a little opening, and somebody actually did. But I guess I prevailed and got them to kind of worked with them and explained my position in case, and they overruled the objection. So I'm still on the ballot, but so in case you kind of hear some things floating around or whatever happens, fill out your paperwork really, really well and double check it. Because there are people that are out there I'm not saying creepy, weird people kind of thing, but there are people out there that are trying to make sure everybody's doing it the right way, but also that there may be some agendas out there that they're trying to get other people not on it, off boards, positions, and position other people better. Beyond that, I did want to say thank you to Rob, not just for his comment about me, but for mentioning the triple I. I went to a couple of, more than a few sessions. One of the ones was on AI, which Tony was a part of the panel, and I thought was really amazing. The one big takeaway I had from that, other than Tony's comments about how robots may rule the world and how electricity is the root of all of the problems associated with this, and go to Triple I, you might learn that, is really kind of like the impact on how tech is creeping into the educational and classroom sphere, right? Because that presentation had Niles School District, their version of you, doing a presentation talking about your level of importance on informing teachers about the safeguards and about the things that they may or may not know about and how to integrate that into their kind of processes, let's say. So it's going to be kind of interesting over the next bunch of years to find out how those all fuse together a bit. And then the other one was I went to a couple of equity-oriented sessions. I don't mean this glibly, but it's going to sound like it. The struggle is real. It's across every district that was there. They all have their own unique issues and flavors and challenges. And no matter the demographic makeup of those communities, they're all finding different issues, which makes it really challenging to figure out what's the right direction forward at any individual one. I went to probably about 2 sessions where everybody was kind of walking in going, tell me what to do. And there was no answer. And I'm not blaming. There was just no good answer, So that's, I appreciate all the effort that the people on the equity committee and those that are involved and those that are informing them and working with them, because that is a hard road and I know it affects every moment, and it's one of the things I'm proud of on the strategic plan, that is kind of infused through the process. And when all the principals and the teachers and everybody are working on this sense of belonging, that's where it kind of starts, in my opinion. So with that, I will conclude my board comment. And then we are going to be moving into a closed session today. We do not have any action items after the closed session, but you are welcome to stay here if you like. If you decide to leave, we want to thank you for coming out this evening, and to everyone that spoke. And again, we'll be moving to a different room. You can stay if you like, but again, there's no board actions afterwards, and you heard all our amazing comments already, so we're not going to do them. So the time is 10 p.m. I will entertain a motion to move to closed session as allowed under Open Meetings Act for the purposes of exceptions 5 ILCS 120/2C1 and 5 ILCS 122/2C2. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Danielle,
Second.
second by Sue. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Can I just make a correction on that?
Yeah, what did I do wrong?
We did not have, I should have taken 2 out.
Oh, okay.
It's just exception 1.
Just the first one? Okay.
Yeah, just exception 1.
Okay, thank you. Noted.
And so, Arlandu,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Sliger,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you guys sticking with us today.